you mind if I stay by your side? Just looking at you all the time goes by. Do you mind if I stay by your side? Just looking at you all the time goes by.
Those have been the best finished watches I've encountered. Okay, Archie Luxury live stream. If that's really Archie Luxury, I salute you, my man. I know you're on the other side of the world and you're getting up early to watch that. What else is going on here?
Yo, 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 Marcelo, what's going on, man? How you doing?
How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. It must be super early for you right now in Tokyo. What time is it, like 2 a.m.? What
It's
time is it?
2:30 in the morning. I just before I'm going to go to sleep, I just saw you did the schedule. I said, no, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I was
Okay.
gonna do some afternoon watch talk and just entertain the punchers for a bit. I had some time. I thought, let's talk some watches. Let's have a bit of fun talking watches. Yeah, when I saw you log on right at the start, I was like, whoa, shit! Like, what time is it? And I don't have my world time on, so I was like I'm gonna do the math in my head. I think it's like 2:30 in the morning. But yeah, you're welcome to chill and hang out, talk some watches with me, or obviously if you're going to bed, listen in because I'm going to be doing some different topics that I'm going to be talking about watch collectors versus watch enthusiasts. I'm going to be talking about emotional watches, like why we buy certain watches, purely for emotion. I'm going to be talking about,
I,
different
I
cases and stuff like that. So yeah.
I agree, but you know what? On that topic, I actually going to ask you a question that a little bit would bother me today earlier. But what do you think about this new Rolex Submariner book? Would you order it? Would you buy it? I mean,
Yeah,
what do you think?
it's a good question. Let me pull up that book that that you're talking about because yeah, look, it's been the topic on a lot of shows, and I think it's a good question, and a lot of folks kind of know me for Patek Philippe and enjoying different types of Patek Philippes, but
Mm,
where this book kind of ties in is important is the author. Okay, Nick Folks has authored this book, The Submariner,
mm,
the watch that unlocked the deep, and Nick Folks wrote the autobiography or the biopic, whatever, of Patek Philippe as well, the official or the authorized biography of the brand. I have that book. Really excellent, tons of detail. Nick Folks is, he's written for Patek Philippe magazine, so he is not
nice.
only he's a watch collector, he's a watch enthusiast. He's been doing kind of journalism in the watch game for a long time. So yeah, I'm actually quite excited about this. Right, I think if you didn't know that about the book, you might just be like, oh, it's a Mariner book, and why the hell do I need to buy this? Um, why I find it exciting. I don't know if you saw my show yesterday where I was talking about um, vintage watches, neo vintage watches, different references. What I've heard about this book is it has production dates. It gives a lot of detail that's maybe not in the public eye.
Wow.
Around and especially if you're a collector or you're going to become a collector in the future, right? Because at some point, modern watches are going to become vintage, neo vintage, whatever, right? Having a book like this, I think, is really good. I know not everybody reads books, not everybody's interested in them, but personally
But
speaking, the question to me, Marcelo, is yes, I will buy this book purely by the fact of who the author is, because I know the kind of work that they do, and I'm, obviously a Submariner is an iconic model, so I'd be very interested.
look, I mean, if this book tell you, listen, I know that they did the 200,546 hoax, because this would appear in the book.
Well, I
I
think
think,
that's yeah. I've heard that people were talking about that. That it has production numbers as well as years of production, which is when we kind of talking about Rolex, right? Like,
Mm,
you can look at the old registries and you could figure out serial numbers to years until they went into the scrambled serial numbers. So
yeah,
it does become interesting if Nick Folks has insider information or has more information that's just not in the public eye. So yeah, and I heard it's not that expensive. It's like I think the Patek book was way more expensive. I don't think this. Do
yeah.
you know how
But
much this is going to cost? I haven't.
it's about 120, 150 bucks. I think it's a little bit more expensive. You know what? Actually, here is the thing: it's a little bit more expensive on the limited edition that come directly from the publisher.
Mhm.
The question is, I understand they come with a silk, no, around it. The book is a bit more nice than what's going to be the Amazon version. Question is, does the limited edition have more pages, or how we say bonus pages, that you're not going to get in the normal production? This actually was something that was bother me. I was curious about that.
Honestly, I'm not sure. What I think is yeah, I don't really know the difference between kind of the main book and the whatever could be on Amazon and whatnot.
Yeah,
I'm not really looking at it from a collectability perspective. I think on your part, maybe you should, right? Because if you're a big, if you're a Submariner fan, Rolex fan, you collect a lot of Rolex or dive Rolex memorabilia.
yeah,
Yeah, it's worth looking into a collector's edition. Honestly, I don't know that much about that. I'm more wanting this book for like what I'm showing on the screen. Just
yeah.
kind of the first time we see the Triplock crown in a design format, right? And really get great photos about it and just
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's this is a watch we wear every single day, right? Many of us that wear Submariners, for us to see stuff like this, especially if you're a watch nerd, right? Like to kind of see the Triplock crown, and everyone's like, you remember the first time you washed your hands, or it's raining outside, and you may have forgotten the crown was out. It's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to many people. And you just quickly push it back in. It's interesting to see how the Triplock crown is how protected the actual mechanism is by this by just this in and of itself. So super cool, man. So yeah, like I would totally be interested in this, Marcelo, purely for the fact that you're just getting um you're really getting a lot in a book written by
Uh,
an author that I think is just does a fantastic job documenting history.
Look, the most stunning thing is that we know Rolex never ever, for all his history, never reveal how many pieces they actually produce from
A-
each model and so on. If we're getting this information from the sub on this book, and maybe next year come in a GMT book, and a year later come in a Daytona book,
mhm.
and so on, um, basically, you know, the next 10 years, we're going to have the whole Rolex catalog information on details about all the watch production. I mean, I,
Well, look,
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I mean,
Marcelo, there's been people that make careers out of this, right? Like
mm,
authors that are now like, on YouTube that are doing YouTube videos now. Like
mm,
Nick Folks, like for those that don't know, I mean Nick Folks, you can look him up.
mm,
He does cigar videos, he does sartorial videos on clothing. Obviously, he talks about watches. He doesn't do a watch channel like is traditionally known as a watch channel, but if you look him up, he's
yeah,
very public. Archie knows him. Archie's talked about him for years. His 5107 Calatrava, the first one, the
mm,
white gold basic one. Like Nick Folks wrote an article in a Patek Philippe magazine saying that that's one of the most beautiful watches in the world, right? And Archie, he read that article, and that really drove him to buy that watch. Like it's part of even the Archieverse history. A lot of people don't know about Nick Folks and how he's influenced Archie, who's then influenced many of
wow,
us who bought Patek Philippe. So anybody who's listening who's bought a Patek Philippe because of Archie, right? Like Nick Folks helped Archie get that 5107. So it is for anybody in the Archieverse is considering that in and of itself has its own little piece of history.
Uh,
Yeah, when it comes to this book, the Submariner, the watch that unlocked the deep, Nick Folks, right? Like many reasons, Marcel, I could give you on why I would want this book.
mm,
Um, and honestly, for you, I think for a guy who's a big Rolex collector, for Bear, for Mark Goldberg, like this to me would be a must-have in a collection, even if you don't read
yes,
books.
I agree.
It's just you guys are such big Rolex collectors, and the sub is such an iconic piece that like you can't not have it. And look, Marcel, there's tons of books on Rolex. I mean,
I know, I know.
The
Like
Mondani books are
thousands of
crazy money, dude, and like they're not updated, or I haven't seen an updated version as of this year. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's a really cool concept. Yeah, Dirk Diggler. I met Nick Folks' kid a few times at Davidoff of London. Real nice, down to earth guy. This is one place, Marcelo, we didn't go to that I'm a little disappointed that we didn't. I didn't know so much about Davidoff of London, Dirk, when I was in London a few months ago, and the owner, Eddie Sahakian, who does a ton of like cigar videos and lighter videos and stuff like that. A big watch guy. You see him wearing, watches on every video. And I was told, I don't know if it was Dirk who told me in London or somebody was mentioning in the chat, take the Archie to Davidoff of London. And obviously, I'm not a big cigar guy. I don't really know that much about cigars. But now I kind of understand it after watching a bit of Eddie Sahakian's videos. So yeah, Dirk, really, really think it's a bit of a missed opportunity
Mhm.
because yeah, Nick Folks is friends with the Sahakians. He does frequent Davidoff of London. Yeah, and Davidoff of London has a tie to watches. So yeah, maybe an opportunity for next year, Dirk. But yeah, Nick Folks, like he's a legend. Like he for anybody who owns the Patek Philippe biography, you'll understand what I'm talking about. That's why I would be excited for this book myself.
Wow.
So yeah, but kind of getting into some topics on watches, Marcelo. Um, I'm going to share beautiful Patek Philippe World Time. This is a
I
cloisonne
love
dial.
this.
Yeah, enamel cloisonne dial. Everybody kind of knows the Jamie Opulus.
Mm.
He has the rose gold version of this one. Exact same watch, just this one's in white gold.
Yellow gold, yellow gold.
Is it yellow or I think it's
Yes.
I think it's rose. Maybe it's yellow. 5231 G and yeah, I don't really remember. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's the yellow, it's
It's
the
yellow gold. It's yellow. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm looking for pictures. I'm looking for pictures when I was in New York when I was wearing it. Yeah, I couldn't remember yellow rose. So yellow gold on Jamie's, white gold on this one. And
But you also right. It's yellow, but you also right because his watch is not new, and the yellow gold that he have does age and it become more dark, almost like rose. So you're right about that as well.
why I thought it was rose was
Mm,
Jamie didn't wear it to London, right? And obviously I met Jamie a
mm.
number of times in London in the daytime. When I met him when he was wearing it in New York last year, it was at night. So probably, and I have a photo of me, him, and like I think Kausowitz. We were all wearing our watches, and super cool picture, and it was super dark. So either way, yellow gold, 5231, and what I think here, why I'm bringing up the world time specifically, is okay. Now I got other people texting me. It's rose. I don't know, guys. Rose gold, yellow gold. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit. Whichever one it is, it doesn't matter. I'm going by a picture from like a year ago. I don't remember.
That
Jamie
always
didn't bring
that
it to London, so I can't. I didn't see it. In
for me, for somebody that don't know Patek, always when I visualize the world time, is exactly what you put in now in the video.
yeah.
This little world map in the middle. I always visualize like this. Every other world time, including yours or Archie, that doesn't have this world map, I think it's beautiful word, but I don't see that as a world time.
So for me, I wasn't bringing this because reason I
Mm,
brought this specific one up is it's probably the more
mm,
traditional version. They have a newer version with a date. I don't really find that traditional.
mm.
I much prefer this one. There's still a current model in the collection. For me,
Yeah.
less about the dial here, Marcelo. More talking about watches that we buy because of emotion, the emotion they evoke out of you versus watches you buy for investment, for hype, for flex, for pretty much every other reason we buy it for, right? Um, I never, until recently considered a world time. I've been collecting for over a decade. and never wanted to buy a world time because when I looked at a world time, obviously not a hype piece, not a piece that anybody wants. It was always considered kind of the dog of the range. And when I thought of the world time, what also was poor about it was its functionality. Like it doesn't exist, right? It's not. It's semi-functional, but not functional. I'll give you an example, right? Like on the
Yeah,
world time.
because you have all the time the changing time zones, right? With the summer and the winter, and it basically confused the whole watch.
Yeah, like so you're describing the daylight savings times
Yeah.
difference where when daylight savings time is not kicked in, like the Tokyo time zone on my dial is totally right. But when daylight saving times kicks in, Tokyo then moves into the Bangkok time zone, and whatnot, and you kind of have to manually know, and it's just not great. And also another point you brought up, hey JB, nice to see you, man. What else? Another point that you brought up was time zones constantly change, right? It's not like time zones are static over time. There's been a period of time when Berlin and Germany was, in different time zones than there are today, and Paris and London may
Yes.
have been in the same time zone at one point, right? Like, there's in the old world times, and I'll give you guys an example of an older world time. I'll pull up a 2523 Patek Philippe. This one is a vintage world time, and I'll talk to you guys about what I mean around like time zones changing over time. Because if we see here, um, we've got the Indian time zones. This is probably your easiest spot. Is India on this vintage world time has maybe it's a little bit small here for you guys, so I'll blow it up here. Where you can see Bombay and Calcutta on the
Mm.
on the chapter ring, on the city ring, right? Like at one point in time, India had this is a period of time. It's interesting because world times can become time capsules like this. So what this shows me is this was produced in a period of time under the British Raj. Okay, when the British were
Wow.
yeah, they were they colonized India and they were running India essentially. And at
Mm.
the time when the British ran India, they had two time zones. Calcutta was considered the capital of the British Raj, and then they had another time zone for Bombay. So two time zones. Whereas today, the entire subcontinent of India is one time zone. There is no two time zones anymore. And interestingly enough, it's on a half-hour time zone. So when you look at a modern Patek Philippe, and I'll pull up the other photo I was showing you, you'll see here on this watch, you'll see there's no longer an Indian time zone. There's a Pakistani time zone with Karachi, and then a Bangladeshi time zone with Dhaka. And there's nothing for India in the middle because India is in the middle of those two
Mm.
countries. India has a half-hour time zone now, and therefore it no longer applies to the piece. And that's why I say that world times are always just not functional watches, or if they're functional today, they may not be functional tomorrow. Time zones change, countries change, the world has changed. And so that if you look at it, if you're buying a watch from a pure functionality perspective or hype perspective or investment perspective, the world time never really appeals. Okay. And so then the next question is what and I'll tell you, Marcel, I buy
Mm.
watches for function, right? Like, I mean, I want to use, if I have a chronograph, I want to use it. If I have a perpetual
Yeah.
calendar, I want to use it. I mean, do you feel the same way with your watches? Do you feel that like when you buy a watch, and it has a complication, you want to be able to use it?
Wow. Okay, so the sub I am using all the time I'm turning, I actually using the Submariner like a timer. I mean to measure
Hmm.
different times. Um, the GMT, I'm of course I have the GMT time zone. I'm playing with the time zone to see different time zones. I do play with that watch pretty much a lot, also as a timer. The Daytona. The Daytona a little bit less. I do enjoy the Lamonda that actually the 24 hours
Hmm.
complication actually is so functionable, almost like a second time zone. You can use that because you have a 24 hours countdown.
Hmm.
So is complete is almost like a dual time watch. So it's a very very interesting thing. But yeah, I like to play with the complications, of course.
Right. You like to play with the I think everybody does.
Mhm.
If you're a watch collector or a watch enthusiast, I'm sure you do. So here becomes the difficult pill to swallow, right? Like when you have to spend 35,000 US dollars, 40,000 US dollars, 80,000 US dollars, or in Jamie's case, which is a rose gold, because I've been corrected by somebody who
Mm.
definitely knows because they've seen the watch. Rose gold 5231. Um, you know, Jamie spending over 100 grand, right? Like, so
Mm.
then the question comes into the why, right? Tan, if you're a guy, or Marcelo, you're a guy who likes to use the complications, why the hell would you spend, tens of thousands of dollars on a piece that's not functional? And it's taken me over a decade, Marcelo, to understand the why. And, after speaking to Archie, after speaking to Higgins, after speaking to Jamie, and many people that own World Times, they explained it to me that, it's not about the functionality. It's not about, having to be absolutely accurate, when you're looking at it, right? Like, just kind of how Darth Nagus is saying it here, right? He's saying, do people use half-hour time zones? I always thought they just round to the nearest hour. Yeah, there are half-hour time zones. And in the case of, if I wanted to know what time it is in Bombay, I know that India is a half an hour time zone ahead of Karachi. So yeah, I can do the math, right? And that's what, Jamie, Higgins, Archie, they're all like, yeah, dude, you can do the math, right? If you know if it's daylight savings, it's an hour behind. It's not that it's not functional, but it's not really the point. What you're missing is when you look at the watch and what it speaks to you, how it
Then,
speaks to you.
the best example is when you own a mini repeater and you see, look how amazing you can know the time by sound. When you activate the mini repeater, you can barely hear it.
Yeah, look,
So,
it's let me get
so
I'll get into the minute repeater thing in a second here. Let's talk about the world time, because I think the world time and the minute repeater, while I agree with you that the sentiment or the emotion is the same, the world time and the minute repeater have different reasons for it. So let's look at the world time here,
Mm,
Marcelo. When I look at a world time, like when I bought my world time, I kind of bought it like in the the faith idea that, like, what I had heard from people that have are very enthusiastic about these watches, those three, Archie, Higgins, and Jamie. um I really was looking for that emotion, and when I looked at it, I looked at the dial when I picked it up, and I started to think about people that, or memories that I had in different areas of the world. Right, when I took the watch to London, right, you can see here London right at 12 o'clock. Whenever I look at my world time now, when I think of London, right, I think of handing you the watch, and and just how you felt, and how you, when you were showing
that
it to
was
mommy.
amazing.
Yeah, like, look, I
That
mean,
was
you're a Rolex guy, you have a Le Mans, like, yeah, is a world time nice, is a Patek Philippe nice? Yeah, but I watched you, put it on, observe it, look at it, and just feel a different vibe. Your body posture changed a bit, right? It's what that watch did to you, even though it evokes a different emotion for me. But when I look at London now on my dial, I have great memories of, like, being in London with you guys, and meeting up with my friends, and really enjoying a great time, as well as thinking of people who, when I look at the watch and I think of London, I think of, like, what's Muhammad Ali doing today, right? Like, I wonder what new watch he's buying, and what cigar he's smoking, right? Or, it makes me think of people in the UK like Danny, and Thomas Burnett, and just people that are, people that I speak to often enough, and I have good memories with, right? Like, and then it just goes around the world, right? Like, I have friends and family, and just, Archieverse punter friends and real life friends all around the world, Marcelo. Like, when I think of Tokyo, when I look at Tokyo on the dial, right? Same thing. It evokes the emotion of, like, my own
yeah.
adventures in Tokyo, but also, like, I got two good friends between, yourself and your wife, that, and that's why I know it's 2:30 a.m., right? Because I never knew the fucking Tokyo time zone until I met you. And, so this is what I mean by emotion, right? This watch, you know, it means something different. And that is why it's justified. That is why this watch exists. It's not to be absolutely functional like your GMT Master 2, which you can set and be absolutely accurate because you're tracking two time zones. Here, it's less about that. It's more about the world traveler, the world experience, the how the world is getting smaller, and memories, right? Because I think someone asked Archie this question a few days ago, and I'm going to ask it to you, Marcelo. Right? Do
Mm.
you remember? You know, what means more to you in life? Right? Like the objects we, we collect or we gather or we buy, or the memories you make with those objects or people or experiences. Right? Like to you, is it the object that makes you happy, or is it the experience that makes you happy?
The experience and the object is just a reminder of the experience.
And
It's
that's a
just
great.
following of it.
And I really want to just give a follow up to that question for you, Marcelo. Let's
Mhm.
go back in time to last year when you got the call for the Le Mans, and you rounded up mommy and you took the bicycles. I think you took the bicycles. I don't know. Maybe you took the train. Um,
I know. Actually, when I pick up the Lamon, I took the taxi, and you know
all
what?
right, all right. Talk to me about the experience, because this is what I want to know. I want to know about the emotional part of that experience.
Wow! Look, the biggest emotion that I had of the watches was the two watches gave me a lot of emotion of picking them. It was the GMT with the Meteor dial because that actually opened the door with Rolex for me that time, and I was excited. I was over the moon when I got the GMT with the Meteor dial, and the Platona with all the emotions of getting that watch on my 50th birthday, on the date of the 50th birthday, and so on. That was something that I will never forget, and I think probably the watch that I will never sell. I really very emotional on that. The Lamon emotions of loving this watch and understanding the watch came later. You know,
Mhm.
is how am I going to put it this way? Think about it. You're not this kind of religions when they are both when you get introduced to a girl and if she's going to be your wife,
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
meet her, you talk to her, you of course you don't love her because you just met her and you guys are engaged and you guys going to get married tomorrow, and with time, a year, 2 years later, you're starting to love her. You're really starting to love her, you know? So,
I think this is a YouTube first, guys, and that Marcelo had to learn to love the Le Mans. This is breaking news on a midday stream. We got 43. We got 43. We got 40 people listening. Obviously, a lot of people are
yeah,
probably at work and just listening, which is fine. We're
because for me, the Lamont was, I mean, with all, look, to say with all the respect of my knowledge in watches, you know that my knowledge is not huge. I learn from day to day, and all the time. The love that I have to watches, I actually study every time when I see, and when I got the Lamont, I just would study alone, understanding the watch, watching clips, videos, and it came later, unfortunately, it didn't came so.
look.
Um,
I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to know anything about watches to be totally honest with you. Like you don't have to know anything about watches to evoke emotion, to justify a purchase because of it, right? Look, Marcelo has described that, like, to him, and look, I don't think there's anything wrong with what you said. You've said it in the past, the Le Mans Daytona, like, is it nice? Yeah. Is it like half a million nice? No, you said it yourself. This is
yes,
it's this precious metal Daytona. It's nothing special. You've even said you had other more special watches like your Meteorite Pepsi and your Platona getting it on your 50th. Like those meant something to you, right? So,
yeah.
um, not every watch purchase has to be about emotion. Some can be about investment. Some can be about pure financials, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Look,
Um,
look. Another thing is, I learned to love the watch, and I really, really love it. But the problem is, as you know, I'm not a millionaire, and I'm going to need to sell my watches in the future. Let's say I bought them as part of investments, and I need to sell them. The money that so I maybe can keep maybe the Platona, as really one watch or maybe another one. but the money that fetch on the Lamont is so high that it's going to be very difficult to keep that watch forever. I mean, it really, it become a little bit crazy.
Yeah, look, anything can happen in life, Marcelo. You could hit the lottery and become a millionaire and do all this stuff, and the other way around could be the absolute opposite. We got the real big boy HR joining us. What's up, big boy?
Quick wristwatch check.
All right, let's put him full screen here, big boy. We got Mom's Bluesy, Mom's Bluesy, Mom's Bluesy.
Nice.
What'd your mom? Okay, and Mom made you dinner as well. What did she make you?
I've got a vegan katsu curry.
Ooh, thank you, Mom. Mom's making you dinner, buying you watches. HR, you're living the life, man. Jake the yuppie he's jealous.
Quick baby check. Here's one baby.
Hey,
Here's another baby.
hey.
Is that a real Rolex? Yes.
Yeah, it's like dad. I think that's the one. Yeah, I think.
This is the 41.
Yes, it's a 41. Mommy bought it for me.
This is beautiful, man.
Yeah, Marcelo, he was unsure. His mom didn't want it. She wanted something else. Everyone was telling HR, like, what the fuck, man? You have a bluesy. Do not let that go. Do not return it. Like, just keep it.
By the way, another thing that nobody mentioned about this Lamont, and it took me a little bit a while to realize this. You're really going to find it very funny.
Yep.
White gold have a specific tone, a specific color. You know that. You have white gold watches, you know that, and platinum have a tone as well. This watch, the way that you see, you realize that it look like steel. And this something funny, because I actually was looking at my Starbucks, and I realized the polish area, and it's the same color tone. It's funny. They actually they manipulate the color of this white gold to look like steel. I'm serious. It's actually funny.
No, you know what? I think that's and you're right, because the 904L steel has a completely different sheen to it compared to
Yes.
anything else, right? Like, it really, I think Rolex, where they really do a great job, is cases, bracelets. Like, man, they just look like something else. They don't look like everyday other steel watches. Like, you can clearly tell the sheen from a Rolex. I agree with you 1,000%.
And they manipulate. This is the same sheen of the steel Rolex 10. I'm serious. It's the same kind of, it's a kind of a sheen that is silver, almost like silver blue, kind of. You know what I mean? Like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
This cold color. This is the Lamont. Is the same. It look like steel. I mean, it's actually so funny, because the fake Lamonts are actually probably steel. And it will look identical to this one. The only way you know is by the weight, because it doesn't have a sheen of a white gold. It's actually
well, maybe that's good though, right? White gold has never really been super popular in Rolex. I mean, Meteorite Pepsi is kind of, in my opinion, kind of the first that's really really hyped in white gold. Like, and I'm talking like really liked. Like every other white gold piece, like Smurf and Cookie Monster and tons of white gold, white gold day dates. Like, the white gold day dates are the least favorite day dates of most people. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy that white gold, there's certain white gold pieces, but I mean, maybe that makes sense, right? Maybe Rolex understands that, customers like the sheen of the 904L steel. A buyer for this watch, because when you wear this, people will probably just assume it's a steel Daytona.
Yes, for
Unless
sure.
if you know on the Le Mans dial and the 24-hour, the 24-hour complication. But like, it just, to me, I think that's the purpose, Marcelo, is they made it that way.
But this is interesting. I don't know if they did it specifically only on this Lamont, or this is the new formula with the all new white gold pieces that are going to look like kind of this steel tone. This I don't know. But
look, if it's real and it's not just your aged 52, almost 53 maybe years old eyes.
No, because I compare.
Yeah, I'm just saying, even if you compare, your eyes may be deceiving you, Marcelo.
Okay, when you come in November, we talk. You're
Yeah,
going
look,
to see.
for me, it's okay. Look, if it is real and they've changed the sheen of the white gold, great, right? I don't think it would be a one-off for the Le Mans. It would probably be something they do in production.
Mm,
It doesn't really make sense. They would just do it for the Le Mans because, again, like I said, outside of a few handful of pieces, white gold in Rolex is kind of the dog, which is the complete opposite
yeah.
with a lot of other brands. Like in Patek Philippe, white gold is the highest, ranking you could say of the gold colors. It goes white gold, then rose gold, then yellow. Yellow's the least preferred. Even though, if I had a world time with Cloisonné dial, I kind of would prefer yellow gold. I think that like it's more classic that way, and it's a watch that I think should be more classic. But it's just weird that white gold is not, because again, Marcel, a buyer that's buying Rolex wants a certain thing that a buyer that's buying
Mm.
Patek may not want, and that's attention, right? I mean,
Yeah,
why would you
and
not buy
also,
a white gold dated? That's my question to you, Marcel. Why would you not buy a white gold dated?
and me, wow, nah, they did have to be yellow or rose gold because
Wh-
it's a
But
watch
why?
that.
But why? But why? I want you to give me the why, Marcelo.
Day date is this kind of man. I mean,
I'll
it's
give you some help.
difficult
I
to
mean,
explain.
I'll pull up a white gold day date, and then we can see because I'm
Look. I would probably, if I had my extra money, I probably would buy just for the gimmick of it a white gold or a platinum day date to continue the white gold metal, or how we say the wearable unsure watch. Because look, day date or even day just if they make a white gold and things like this, everything that is white gold or platinum you can wear daily basis, like is dress up, down, no problem. In the minute you put uh, a watch like this in yellow gold or rose gold, Colel bracelet, that thing pops from a mile away.
hmm
And sometimes you do want the attention, and the day date model is usually a watch that you buy for attention. If you buy a day date and just because you like the day date and you say, you know what, fuck the attention, I don't want attention, so you buy a white gold, it would be pretty much, yeah, like a stainless steel. It looked beautiful with this blue dial, by the way.
Yeah, I think it does. It's just, is that going to be people's first choice? And it's likely more people's last choice, right? Now, I'll talk about day dates in a second. Dirty Danny, I
The,
wore my
the,
rose gold Daytona the other day, and I've totally gone off it. Look, for day dates, Marcelo, if you think about day dates, right? Like the day date is the upper, echelon model, right? You got the date just, and then you got the day date. It's always been the date
yeah,
just
but
and the day
but
date.
basically what you did here is actually I have a day just that costs 10 grand, and you put a
hmm
day just for 50 grand.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what
That's
you
what
did.
but that's why I picked this exact model, okay?
Mm,
Because when you look at this exact model, it's very easy
mm,
to mistake it
mm.
for a date just if you're not looking close enough, right? From afar,
Yeah.
could be a date just. Unless you're looking at the president bracelet, you kind of just see from afar a fluted bezel and a cyclops on stick hour mark. Like, it's not a
But
Submariner. Mhm.
by the way, from a distance, the president bracelet they almost look like a jubilee.
Right. So again, Rolex buyers may be a bit different, right?
Mm,
When you buy a day date, when you buy any Rolex, I'm not even gonna talk about the day date. I'm talking about any Rolex, right? You are looking to, you're making a statement. Every single one of us
mm,
is. Even the guy who just collects whatever, like, they all came to Rolex. The statement was a big thing. It's not, people aren't here for the high horology. Like, guys, let's ain't nobody taking these diving, down 300 meters. Like, come on, guys. Like, we're here for the snobbery. We're here for the flex. And when you buy a Rolex, you want it to look like a Rolex. You want it to have some flair to it. You want it to look nice. Look, I'm gonna call a spade a spade. I'm gonna call out bullshit. I'm like that. You're like that. Danny's like that. We're all like that.
mm.
And when you look at this and you're like, well, fuck, like this looks like a date just. And that has always been, I would say, the problem with white gold is it kind of goes counter to why people buy Rolexes and really fueling that drive to want a Rolex. Oyster. If you look at the rose gold, the Ever Rose, Marcelo, like it's a very like coppery rose gold. It's not like Patek's rose gold, where it's a more warm rose
Ah,
gold. You know.
one more thing that I first time I heard about this, I think was like 2 days ago. Something that I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, because somebody actually told me regarding. I think it was somebody told me, or I really don't remember where I heard that they say that uh, Muslims or Arab, somebody religion, Muslim or Arab,
Hmm.
don't wear yellow gold or rose gold. That's why it's so popular, the platinum and white gold. So is it true on that, or this is just completely bananas or
No,
something?
there's truth to that. It kind of mixes between
Mm,
religion and culture, I would say. Um,
mm,
and I'll tell you why. So religiously, Muslim men are not permitted to wear gold. And
okay. And
okay,
white gold is okay, and platinum is
well,
okay
but that
because it's not
this
gold.
is where there's gray areas, right? Like, at the time when that ruling was put out, it was only yellow
Mm,
gold, and we can get into a religious discussion, but that's not really why I want to take it.
yeah.
Did somebody say, "Hombre, what's going on, America?" Um, so the reason why, and again, right, like the religion it crosses it crosses countries, right? It's like Christianity, right? You got German Christians,
Right.
you got English
Yeah,
Christians, French Christians. It's all across
but
different.
you know why I ask you that?
Yeah, but
Because
let me get into the
yeah, yeah,
culture
yeah,
part.
yeah,
Let me get into
yeah.
the culture part, right? Like in India, right? Culturally, men, I mean, wearing gold is not uncommon, right? So you will see
Mm,
Some Indian Muslim men wearing gold because it's a cultural thing as well. It's not something that they wouldn't do and stuff like that. But okay, so to
right.
answer your question, also culturally, I think in the Arab world, yellow gold is mainly for women to wear, and so therefore the whiter metals are more popular with men. Obviously, if you're sticking to strict religion, you could just buy platinum. That's why platinum has a big following. The actual Mecca
Mm,
dial for the world time. Patek Philippe did a world time where they did a Jerusalem dial and they did a Mecca dial. Mecca obviously being
nice.
for Muslims, and that Mecca version is in platinum only. It's not white gold because obviously gold is not religiously not permissible. It's a religious kind of nod, I guess. So, anyways, platinum. And then obviously the white metals, because again, men don't wear yellow, men don't wear rose in those culturally in that area. So you'd see a lot more people buying white gold.
Nice. And I mean, the second follow question was actually had to do with the history part, because of course I believe Swiss companies wanted to sell watch also to Arabs in Arab countries.
Mhm.
So maybe that's why the popularity of white golds and platinum is starting to come on their brand, for that reason, maybe.
No, I think look, white metals are very popular with, a lot of people, right? Americans love white metals,
Mhm.
Americans love buying white gold. Asian countries. I was talking to Watch Chat. He was on. I don't know if you saw Watch Chat, a new guy, Irwin from Malaysia. I asked him the question, what color of gold is more popular in Malaysia, ranking wise? And he actually said, I think he said yellow was still popular, most popular, and then rose was kind of making a comeback or getting more
Mm,
popular, right? So it is different in different parts of the world. So, but I don't think the Arab connection, because the Arab countries are buying those colors, are necessarily what's driving it. I think it's not just them, but I think a lot of other countries, European countries, North American countries, also white gold is very popular, and same with platinum. So yeah, I think it's more than just that part of it. Yeah. But hey, but there is it. I mean,
yeah.
what you did say is true. Like white gold, platinum is more prominent in the Middle East um, for that reason. Because of both mixed religion and also the other thing is Marcelo is like not everybody's religious, right? Like there's just
Yeah.
people who don't give a shit and they'll just wear whatever, right? Like there's still people who buy yellow gold and rose gold, but they may not wear it in those countries because again, culturally, even though religious wise, it's forbidden or not permitted, but culturally it's also not accepted. Whereas in, India, Pakistan, the Indian subcontinent, gold, has existed. It's been a lot more prominent in culture, and therefore, you know, there could be someone who's like, ah, fuck it, I don't care about wearing gold
But it's not.
religiously, and they still wear it.
But it's not like, let's say, a bad eye fanatic thing
Nah,
that
nah,
if
nah,
I
nah,
wear
nah,
yellow,
nah,
I,
nah, nah, nah,
you know,
nah, nah. Like,
okay.
nobody gives. It's not that. Like, it's a very obscure. Like, it's not obscure, but it's a very, like, it's not a topic that would cause a problem. Like, at the end, we have a lot. Like, I mean, everybody knows I'm Muslim, and we have other Muslims that wear,
Mm.
gold, and and others that don't. Right? I don't judge nobody. They don't judge me, so it's all good. But that's it. But yeah, again, back to the topic of Rolex and white gold and yellow gold and rose gold. Like, why white gold? And that's why I find the meteorite Pepsi so fascinating. Is that's a hype watch? Like, it's a fucking white gold watch that is hyped, right? And it's hyped for the right reasons, because, like you said, when we were looking at the Le Mans, and I think this is kind of, it applies to the same way in the Le Mans, and that you own both watches, is because it's trying to, or it mimics the look of a very popular steel watch, whether that's the
Yes.
Meteorite Pepsi mimicking the look of the steel Pepsi, or the Le Mans mimicking the popularity of the ceramic Daytona, which is arguably the most hyped Rolex out there, right? I think that's why they're doing it.
Well, I mean, in this Lamont, I mean, you have so much crazy things in this watch. I mean, I mean, I can continue to talk about this a lot. The problem is with the meteor dial GMT.
Mhm.
This is have a reason. A 100th anniversary of Le Mans, 60th anniversary of Rolex. The Smurf have a reason. Released in 2008, 100th anniversary of Rolex. First time the introduction of the white gold, the
Yeah,
Submariner for
let
that
me pull up
anniversary.
this. Let me pull up the
The,
Smurf, because when you did your video on the Smurf, it was a few weeks ago or something like that. You were just showing your watches, and the Smurf came up, and you were talking about all the innovations of the Smurf. So I'm going to pull up a Smurf here for everybody,
Right,
and
and the thing is, the what is funny about the GMT meter dial is like came in 2019. No, and that watch was supposed to be an anniversary piece of the GMT. That would be amazing anniversary piece of the GMT. It came out completely no anniversary date, no reason at all to release that watch. It's like, why? In the middle of nothing.
let me just grab a few comments here from Surdy Danny. Number one, he enjoyed. I don't know if he caught some of that yesterday. I did some vintage talk. Obviously, I love vintage. I collected vintage. I don't really collect vintage as much anymore. I do have some pieces, but
Yeah.
yeah, I did some vintage
So,
talk, and
so,
yeah. But I want to
so
answer
let
this.
me tell you.
Let
Yeah,
me answer this. Let me
yeah. Sorry,
Let's
sorry.
me answer this for Surdy Danny real quick. Um, Submariner 1680 or 5513. Danny, it depends on which 5513. If it's the 5513 Explorer dial, I will take that all day long. If not, as I said yesterday, the 1680 is such an iconic model. I'll pick a Mark One meters first red Submariner 1680. If it's not the 5513 Explorer dial.
But by the way, today Sky actually showed me the 55112, and it was a fraction of the price. It's something like you can get one for $12,000. That this is a joke. I
Look,
mean, I was
it's not
like,
a
whoa.
Yeah, again, so back to my discussion yesterday about vintage, right? Like,
Mm,
vintage can be a minefield in the sense that, like, well, if you're buying, if you're paying top dollar for something that is being presented as original and untouched and
mm,
unpolished and all this jazz, right? Yeah, you could be spending 4 or 5x that 10,000 you were talking about. However, you could have a 5512 that has a service dial that has been polished in not a great way, that has replacement insert, like, it's not really
mm,
close to being original, but it's still a 5512. It has authentic parts that were serviced by Rolex. Like, Rolex is okay with it looking this way. It's not authentic. It's just not original. And that can
mm,
absolutely destroy the value of it. Danny's asking a question. 6263. This is a vintage Daytona or Le Mans. Obviously, Apes knows the answer. It's going to be a 4-digit Daytona.
Mm.
And that's a question to you: Paul Newman Daytona, vintage or Le Mans, right? Like, I mean, you probably make more off of Paul Newman Daytona there, Marcelo, if you're trying to invest in. I don't think the Le Mans is going to catch up.
Yeah, it would. It would. And I mean, I wish I could get the yellow gold. I don't think I'm going to get the yellow gold. I mean, there's so crazy stories about that. But the yellow gold is actually so much. It look almost like the John special edition
The
that
John
was
Mayer.
released.
The John Mayer. Look, listen. Let me ask you a question here. So,
No, not John Mayer. John special. John Players
John
special.
Player special. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about. So we're on the topic of white gold Rolex, and
Mm.
just they've always been the dogs, and this one, the Smurf, is one of the biggest dogs I'd say in the range
It
right now.
is.
But can you walk me through the innovations that came on this watch when it got
Sure.
released?
Sure. Introduced first time in 2008. So 2008 was an important year, was actually the 100th anniversary of Rolex.
Mhm.
So then they released this watch that was basically first time ever that Rolex did a Submariner in a solid white gold. First time that actually they put the caliper a Serrochrome bezel. First time introduction of a caliper Serrochrome bezel. Up to that time, it was only black Serrochrome bezel that was actually introduced 4 years earlier on the GMT. And then in some Daytonas, actually, sorry, on the GMT and the F. Only on the GMT they introduced 4 years earlier. The other thing is that the first time they actually introduced this watch also with a mechanism that was the glide lock. Also introduction of the glide lock. I think first time also in the movement, first time introduction of the silicone hairspring that came up to be popular with this piece. Also, they had actually close to 50 patents on that watch. First time that you see the maxi dial, first time also this very sky blue lacquered color. Actually, you know what it was funny about this Smurf was that 2 years later in 2010 when they changed the whole lineup of the sub and they basically introduced everything with the Serrochrome bezel and so on, the yellow gold, the Submariner with the blue dial and the blue Z was with the Smurf blue.
Wow.
And people didn't like it. And it was a very short run of, I think, 1 or 2 years. And then they actually changed it to the Sunburst blue.
Beautiful.
So there's a very short time that you can get a blue Z or a yellow gold sub with a blue Smurf.
Was this the first with a glide lock as well? I don't remember if this was the.
Yeah, it's the first time with the glide lock. Yes.
Right. That in and of itself is a big. I mean, who doesn't love a glide lock? I've never met a single person who does not like a glide lock. And because I remember watching that video and you were talking about it, and I was fascinated, right? Because I obviously I love Rolex, but I'm not I'm not as keen to research more modern models. So when you were talking about all the innovations in this piece, and you were like, guys, I don't know why the hell this Smurf is not popular. I kind of agreed with you. I was like, fuck, you know what? Like, that's the first glide lock, Rolex with a glide lock. It's kind of a dog right now. Nobody wants it. Like, maybe this does have.
The problem was the ear. The problem was the ear. And another problem, because like I said, this watch is so important because it's the 100th anniversary of Rolex. They released this super special watch with so many innovations, so special color and so on. They needed to discontinue this watch like they did with the Lamont a year later or maybe 2 years later, not running this watch for 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, Rolex was also at a different time in like 2008, right? Like we're talking about a different Rolex. It's not like today where, because I mean, think about it, right? That was at a time when Rolex were selling at super cheap prices on the, on the secondary market. Like you're getting
Yeah.
Submariners at 30% off from David SW. Like it was
Oh
not the
wow!
same.
Listen, you could get this Smurf for about 12 grand in the second-hand market or something. You really could get
But
it very
that's what
cheap.
I'm getting at is for that watch to have this much innovation in it, the first piece with the glide lock, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of that in and of itself, in my opinion, has the opportunity to become a future classic. And look, what I know about Rolex, and Danny's really helping us out here. He's throwing a bunch of questions. And I'm going to get to you, Danny. I like riffing with the chat. I don't always have to go with my topics.
Hey,
Um,
I would love to see the Smurf going to get a
uh,
big
I,
hype after the Submariner book.
there's no
You know?
reason. There's no reason the Smurf shouldn't, right? Maybe not after the book, but there's no reason over time that doesn't become a love piece. Because number one, again, today when you buy a modern Rolex, and I get it why it's not popular today, because again, the taste, the fashion today, white gold Rolex is not in vogue. It's not
Mm.
fashionable. People don't want it. They want like rose gold. They want yellow gold. They want platinum because platinum is identifiable by the dial. White gold is kind of meh. And yes, in the Submariner, at one point when this was out, Marcelo, this was the only blue dial subby you could get. Now you can get other blue dial subbies in.
No, actually, no. The bluesy and the blue dial sub, you already had it since the 80s.
Yeah, no, I
But
mean,
it was only on the bluesies and
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
like I mean,
solid
I
yellow
meant I
gold.
meant
Yeah,
this color, the shade of blue, right? Like you're
yeah.
getting this very unique shade where, like you mentioned, on the bluesy, it's kind of the same, even though it has some differences, sunburst and one over the years, but the tinge of the blue is identifiable like that. When you're looking at the Smurf, like that shade of blue, like it's unique to that piece, right? And when you're thinking of it being unique, that's why I was always in my mind was like, why is this not popular? Right? Because look at the Cookie Monster. I mean, the Cookie Monster, you got a black dial, you've got,
Yeah.
blue bezel,
That Cookie Monster was a failure. It was a failure.
yeah, it's again because you have a black dial. In this watch, in the Smurf, you have a unique dial. You have a unique, watch that has a ton of innovation. Like first for the glide lock, first for a lot of things, and it's just not loved, and it's not loved
But
because the color is not popular today. And that to me, Marcel, is why I think in the future people are going to actually figure out this watch. Because again, you don't buy a vintage watch for what's in vogue in color today. You buy a vintage watch for its collectability reasons, and I think this has a huge
I
upside
think
for collectability.
I think what can be more collectible is actually, because when Rolex released the Smurf, they released with that special blue, but they didn't thought it's going to be a special blue only for this white gold Smurf. They actually misread the Rolex enthusiasts, and they say, you know what? From now on, this is the blue that go on the subs. From now on, in all the lineup, I mean, in the blues
I mean, they
and
could
in
have
the yellow gold.
done that, but like you said,
No, they
you
did
know,
it. They did it, but they suddenly realized that people hate it. So that's
yeah,
why they stopped it.
yeah, like it's to the point where if you put blue, right? Because you're right. Like when you said, "Hey, 10 there was blue in other ones," right? When I'm thinking of blue, I'm thinking of when I'm focusing on the Smurf, that blue, like you said, never got into the standard sub, and even when they first release it, they can't put it in the steel sub because then you're just going to kill the buyers for the gold
Yes.
one, right? Um, I don't think that blue's not popular. I think that the white gold is not popular. I think if you went that
Uh,
into a steel version of the sub, it would be pop. It's like the Hulk,
it
right? Like
would.
the Hulk.
It
The
would.
Hulk is a popular watch, even though it's a monochromatic green, technically, right? You have one shade of, you have two different shades of green, but it's green all around. And I mean, look, I think that a Cookie Monster in steel would be popular. I think a true Smurf in steel would be popular. I just think that white gold is not popular. And again, Marcelo, like when you're buying collectible watches in the future, you're not necessarily looking for like, oh, what's in vogue today. You're looking for
Right.
an example for a reason. And just like the one I have on the screen. So let me kind of pivot away from the Smurf here. 6538. So Danny's talking about the Big Crown, Doctor No, James Bond, Submariner. And so I pulled one up on the screen, and this is a bit different than your standard. This is different than the one Bond wore in Doctor No. This is an Explorer dial version of the 6538. So again, kind of the same thing I was talking about with the Smurf, Marcelo. This is a different variant that I'm looking for. I'm looking for something unique in this variant, and that's where, again, like the Smurf,
Yeah,
you're looking when you're 20 years down the line. What was the first watch with the glide lock? Oh, it was the Smurf. Oh shit, those are fucking cheap as shit right now. People start
yeah,
buying it up, right?
but then this sub that actually you're just showing now, this was released in 1954, and it was released as a serial of 3 subs. There is another 2 subs next to it.
Yeah.
It was this one is another one that is only pencil hands, and another one that is
Yeah, but in this variant, the 6538, I know that there's other, there was other 4-digit 6X variants,
yeah.
but in this sub model, the 6538, which is the reason why Danny is pointing this out is because this is the one worn by Sean Connery in Doctor No, and I think in
This
Gold,
one, it's shot
not
with
not
the
yeah,
369.
not with a 369. So it's the same reference number,
Ah,
6538.
yeah.
But it's the model with the Explorer dial. So I pulled this one up here.
Yes.
Danny's got another question for us. So he's talking about a 1655 Rolex. I'll pull this up here. We'll start with the vintage before we get to the neo vintage piece. So he's talking about the Steve McQueen. Let me find a Steve McQueen photo for you here, Marcelo. I'll talk a bit about the Steve McQueen for you guys. Not really like a lot of folks have really kind of questioned why this is called the Steve McQueen, because there's no real connection to Steve McQueen as far as anybody can actually corroborate in a photo or whatnot. But this is the original Explorer 2, made for spelunking, which is cave exploration, and was not a GMT when it first came out. This was a 24-hour day-night indicator, essentially, to help you understand really kind of day-night, when it was day, when it was night, and yeah, just a super cool piece. What do you think of the 1655 here, Marcelo?
Well, from a distance with bad eye, it remind me the Breitling emergency.
Yeah, and look, like understand the understand the day night part of it, right? So when you look at, it's not like in the GMTs where you can, obviously on Explorer 2 the
Yeah.
bezel is fixed, as opposed to on the GMT Master 2 where you can actually use the bezel as well, fixed bezel. But here, you're showing time is 8:20.
Yeah.
Call it here 8:20. It is, if you're in the cave, right? It's 8:20 in the morning, but
Yeah, so it tell you the indication of
yeah, like
what.
yeah, you can tell that you're not day night, right? Like you're not at 8:20 in the evening, right? It's a kind of, and you can see here
Yeah.
it points the
The
night indicator
24 hours is synchronized with the hour.
with, exactly,
Yeah.
right. So you can tell the difference between day night on the watch. That was the purpose. It's fixed. It's meant to be. It was meant for a certain purpose of cave exploration, and it was supposed to be functional to know, like, were you in the what time was it, because you're not outside, right? You can't see if it's day or
Sure.
night. And so that was the purpose of this watch. Obviously very niche. Like it's a cool idea. Danny, I really like the fact that Rolex made a watch like this, because it's so kind of crazy, right? Like I'm sitting here, I'm wearing my Explorer 40, guys. And when I look at the Explorer, I'm like the Explorer is kind of a commemorative watch. It wasn't, my watch was not the watch worn up Everest. It was, it was an Oyster Perpetual that then they made a commemorative version called the Explorer off of it, right? No, this watch was meant to actually go into caves and be used for that purpose. I think that's fucking wild, Marcel. What do you think?
I mean, just for that reason alone, you make it very. It's a good story. It's a good story. I am not a cave explorer, so the question would be why I would own this. I would own this because of the story, because of what this watch represents as a story. But it's not really a beautiful piece, in my opinion, but it does have a story.
By the way, Danny says the 6538 is a motherfucker watch, Marcelo. He's not messing around. What's going on, Patek Chris? Nice to see you. And Danny's asking that compared to a gold sub 16618. Have it up on the screen. I actually think these are great value for money right now, Danny. I think the 166. I keep talking to Archie about it. I'm like, man, like why should you not get a 1661? He's like, well, just get the ceramic. It's better. You're gonna like it better. You got the upgraded clasp, the upgraded bracelet. Like he's just like, it's better. But I think these
This is the
1661.
aluminium one, right?
Yeah, it's the pre-ceramic.
It's beautiful. I do like the bracelet, even so that is not with the glide lock. It has something classic on that bracelet, especially in the solid gold, in the yellow solid gold.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I think that look, if you're asking me the question between the two, Danny, it's going to be the gold sub all day long. I do like I said, I do like the 1655 Steve McQueen Explorer 2. Look, from a coolness factor of like, you know, being a watch nerd, which is a cooler watch, I would say a cooler watch from a pure nerd perspective is the Explorer 2, because it just has a more interesting story behind it. It's just a more interesting watch. But if you're gonna ask me like which one would I wear, I'd be like, bro, like I'm not gonna turn down a gold sub, man. Come on.
By the way, on the sub that you showed before, and also the maxi case submariners with the yellow gold and the bluesy, I actually prefer them versus the new one because the texture is colored in yellow gold
Okay.
on
Cool.
the
By the way,
and it just give a nice tone to it.
Patek Chris is saying he just got the Nick Folks book in the mail. So Patek Chris, Marcelo's interested in production numbers of the Hulk. Was the Hulk you wanted? What other production numbers did you want?
Me, I don't. I think I gave an example, and I think it's true. They do give the production number of the Hawks and all other models of the sub. I think the Hawk is interesting because you have one. I have the Starbucks. I don't know if they put that one as well.
I don't know. Brian Tony is asking me, and by the way, nice to see you, Brian Tony. I know everybody in Australia and New Zealand is waking up right now, and I recognize everybody. I'm sure Angelic will be in the chat soon, and hopefully Mr. GMT's listening as well. Brian Tony, Patek Philippe, has Ryan Hoffray been excommunicado from here? Not from me. I like Ryan Hoffray. I got nothing against Ryan Hoffray. You look, the Archie channel, I mean, there's a lot of drama going around, the periphery or still channels you can consider in the Archieverse. Look, I've been focusing, as you guys have seen, last couple of weeks on really turning the Archie show more about watches, more about fun. Archie's got a lot of new panelists that have come on, like Jay Anthony and Watch Chad and Killing Time with Norman and other people that are, hopping on the panel and talking watches. And we're really making this show really what the essence is, of the three pillars: watch, talk, comedy, and drama. But doesn't have to be like extreme on all those angles. So yeah, got no issues with Ryan Hoffray. We're being cool. So if Ryan Hoffray wants to chill in the chat, he is welcome. Everybody, the answer to you, Brian Tony, is everybody's welcome to be here. It's all good. Yeah, but look, Marcel, for me, just to answer Danny's question, just a more interesting watch, I would say, in the Explorer 2 versus the gold sub. However, like I said, I would never turn down a gold sub. I think the gold sub is.
Hey, talking about gold sub, what do you think about the motherfucker?
All right, Marcelo, here's the numbers.
Gold.
Patek Chris just gave you the numbers here, Marcelo. 228,710 Hulks out there in the world.
Oh, this is very interesting. So, actually, this is the point that I wanted to make. If you know the numbers now, because before we always used to estimate, let's say, oh, how many Smurf you have? I don't know, maybe they produce only 1,000, maybe 10,000. Now that you have officially the numbers, would this affect the value of the pieces by knowing the numbers?
Absolutely, I think it could, right? Like Patek Chris, we were just talking about the Smurf, right? And how Marcelo and I, we're both big fans of the Smurf. We both like the Smurf a lot. And where the Smurf is just, it really has that factor of potentially, having some collectability, down the track and whatnot. I would say that, like, we were saying that, like, the piece of the Smurf with all the innovation that goes into it, but it's just a dog because just nobody wants it in today's day and age. People just don't like the Smurf. White gold is not that important. But like if Patek Chris told us, hey, the Smurf was made in like 50,000 production, and that production value is a lot lower than other pieces, yeah, absolutely, people could pick up on that and be like, shit, this is a lot more limited than we thought, and then start buying them up.
Exactly. I mean, could he pull it up? He actually gave us the whole could he pull up and then
Yeah,
number of them.
yeah, he gave us the Hulk numbers, 228,710. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, so let him give us the numbers of the Smurf. That would be more interesting.
Patek Chris, if you have the Smurf numbers, send them through. Dirk Diggler, you've been doing a good job behind the scenes, Tan. There's my ball wash for the day. All good, man. Don't need any ball washing. I'm just here to have some fun. Look, I really do enjoy, obviously, doing watch talk streams. You know, Marcelo hopped on. I was anticipating just to go solo. You know, I know a lot of people are at work. I had the day off. And
he gave us the number of the Smurf. Wow, it's actually interesting. Look, lower.
no,
Whoa.
it's significant. That's significantly lower, right? Like 13,000. And how long was the Smurf produced for, Marcelo?
12 years.
Okay, so let's do the math here. We're doing, it's, you know, 12, 13, 630 divided by 12 years is 1,135 per year.
It's nothing. This is nothing.
It's not a lot, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if and like I said, a lot of iconic parts of this watch, right? I think the glide lock is the biggest part of it. The first watch with the glide lock, produced in small numbers. Yeah, I mean, and right now it's cheap as chips, right? It's not been picked up on, right? That it's a sleeper in that sense. People say it's a sleeper in that, hey, you want a gold sub.
Wow.
You know, that's probably your cheapest way to get into a gold sub.
You know what? I'm going to tease him a little bit. How many let's say solid yellow gold submariners was produced?
For fuck's sake, can you buy the book, Marcelo? Like, can you fucking buy the book? All right. I'll let you ask Patek Chris one more. Fine.
Yeah. Only the solid gold, the yellow solid gold, the submariners, the black dial and the blue dial. How many was produced, and then we can get the kind of estimation what's going on, because this actually can tell us about other models even before the other books get released. 10. This actually can be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure if he has it. I mean, I don't know if that's a more wider range of watches. Danny's asking about the Rolex 3646. So I think he's referring to the movements that Rolex was providing for Panerai. I got a Periscope article actually up on this. It's some California dial version of. So for those that don't know, Panerai used to put a Bosch Rolex movements in their pieces. Rolex 3646, also known as a Panerai, with a Rolex movement in it. I haven't actually read this article from Periscope, so haven't really had a chance to look at it.
Wow,
but
Ken, look at that. He actually wrote the one that was the 116649. I don't know this model. I think it was produced only 51 pieces only.
Yeah, look, I'll pull that up in a second here. Let me just finish up Danny's one here. So,
Yeah.
Look, Panerais with Rolex movements are always cool, Danny. I'm a big Panerai fan. For those that like, when you're thinking Panerai, right? This is a vintage Panerai, and for those that don't know, Panerai, the Luminor is obviously kind of the more popular one these days, but the Radiomir was the original Panerai that was kind of produced for. If you're thinking like World War II era, that's the Radiomir. The Luminor didn't come out, I think, until like the 50s maybe or something like that, Marcel. I don't remember. But the Radiomir, and that's why this Radiomir, this 3646, is a Radiomir case. But yeah, I'll look at this article a little later, Danny.
Just go for millions, no?
Not millions. I don't know about this watch particularly, but I've seen auctions for Rolex Bosch Panerai watches, and yeah, they're not cheap. They're not cheap, but not everyone's gonna go for crazy money. Okay, read out this number to me. 116.
Yeah, I actually see the watch right now. It's fucking ridiculous.
Okay, can you read this out to me? 116649 Ember.
116649.
Yeah, EMBR. All right, let's look up this one.
That look ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, there's
completely unwearable.
All right, let's have a look here. Let's go. So estimate. Okay, so the estimate of this watch. This is an auction from 2016. Estimate was between 180 and 360,000 Swiss francs. Sold in the kind of mid to upper mid of the range. This is obviously in 2016 for 275,000 Swiss francs. Obviously, I mean, if Saad is listening, I'm sure he would absolutely love hearing about this stuff. I mean, only 51 weight, 51 made is interesting. Is this going to drive people to buy it because it's such a low production? I mean, I think they struggle to find 51 people to buy it in the future. You know what I mean? Like, fucking, I don't see 51 more people wanting to buy this.
Look, this is the level of Rainbow Daytona's level. I mean, you go to that category, you know?
But again, does not have the iconic status of the Rainbow Daytona.
Yeah.
And that's why, like I said in the Smurf, the only thing the Smurf has going for it is the innovation that you talked about. You know, it's again, in today's day and age, it's just not a popular metal. It just, people don't want white gold in a sub. They want a gold sub, a yellow gold sub, right? They don't want a white gold sub unless it's the Meteorite Pepsi, which again is hyped because it looks like a steel Pepsi, similar to, like you said, why the Le Mans, which looks like a steel watch, is, you know, it is hyped outside of obviously the low production and everything else. But when we're looking at the Smurfs particularly, like I said, what's different between the two is that innovation that Smurf has. I think down the track, if there's only 13,000 made and they're selling for super cheap, yeah, that's got a lot of upside for sure. There's, like, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't. Once we get past, you know, it being a modern watch.
And there is one more problem. Yes, only 1,300 was made because it was 12 years, as you know. I mean, and everybody was talking about it, especially the earlier versions. A lot of box and papers was thrown away because it wasn't that important. So only a few, I don't know how many few from this number, I would assume maybe 5,000 probably have full sets.
Maybe. Patek Chris is saying, give him a reference, Marcelo. He says there's many different black and blued dials.
Yeah, I'll give you. 116618.
116618.
Yeah. And that reference will give you two colors. Will give you with the blue or with the black.
All right, Dan. Danny says, Tan, I have an interesting watch question. Go for it, Danny. Ask, and ye shall receive, Surdy Danny. We do shit for free when Archie's not around, so it's all good. I'm sure Patek Chris is looking up the 116618. Look, Rolex production numbers are very interesting because there's always that. Rolex has kind of got the stigma of being the, you know, the million watch production brand, right? Million plus watch production brand per year. So when you hear about a certain range that only had 13,000 produced, yeah, like, is every Rolex? This is why people say Rolexes are not collectible in the modern day, because there's a lot of them. Well, yes and no, right? Certain models, like certain Datejust, may have tons of production, and other ones don't.
This one. You're going to like this one, Ten. Just change it's actually 116659. You're going to like this model.
116659. All right, I'm gonna put it in the chat just for Patek Chris to look up for you. Surdy Danny's asking, why did Higgy spend so much on a non-complication Lange? So I'll pull up the Higgy babies. Richard Lange pour le mérite, tourbillon, and then we are going to look it up. I'll go to Chrono 24. Let's see. Let's find Higgy's watch, and here we go. This is one on Chrono 24. Share this tab. $164,450. And so Danny's saying, why did he spend over $100,000 on a watch with no complication? So the reason I make fun of this watch, Marcelo, is because the tourbillon is not considered a complication, and the fusée and chain mechanism, you know, part of the mechanism is it's not. It's part of the mechanism, right? It's not an extra complication that the watch produces besides timekeeping, right? It doesn't show something else like a chronograph, sub register, or, you know, a GMT function or anything else. The tourbillon is essentially similar to the fusée and chain in the sense that it's part of the movement. It's part of making the movement more accurate, and or more, not just accurate at a point in time, but also maybe accurate over a period of time when it's certain, constant force. And what have you. So it's really like it's an interesting thing. Why did he spend so much, Danny? Is because of the fusee and chain. I would say this watch does have some pretty cool aspects to it. It has a
Look, you have an interesting gimmick. You
what
have
has
an interesting gimmick of getting explode. Wow, look how complicated it is, and suddenly you realize it's only a time watch.
well, I mean, yeah, it's a regulator, right? So it's a regulator dial, right? It's not time necessarily in that sense. It's a regulator dial. What it does have that's pretty unique is a hacking tourbillon, which is pretty rare. So yeah, definitely, fusee and chain in the movement, hacking tourbillon. It is definitely a really cool piece. Again, Danny, it's like people buying minute repeaters, right? Like they want a minute repeater as is it, are you going to be dinging that minute repeater all the time? Probably not. You just want to maybe do it once in a while. Yeah, it's the same kind of concept. So that's why. That is the answer, a long answer to your troll question. Here we go. Patek Chris, 116618, subby with blue 11,666, black 7,113. Wow.
Wow. And this is in a period of 10 years.
Right. So you're talking about a little over 1,000, a little over 1,000 for each one. Oh, we got Higgy babies in the chat. He says, "Fight off 30, Danny." I guess we didn't see Higgy earlier,
so interesting. So actually, think about it. Actually, the Smurf look actually more. They actually did more Smurf than what they did actually the blue or the black one. Wow.
They do. Jonathan Quill Higgins III asking for Patek Chris because he's the only one with the book right now. How many of the? I think he means. Is this the deep sea? Okay, so this is the deep sea challenge he's asking about. I don't know, Patek Chris, if Nick Folks was able to get the deep sea challenge production numbers into that book. Would be cool.
It will get only the discontinued versions that you already discontinued, not the versions that are on production.
Well, not only that, I mean, the deep sea is not really a Submariner, right? Like it's a different lineup.
No, the deep sea is there. No, it is.
Is it? So they include it?
Yeah. Because it's the whole diving range. Yes.
Yeah. So that's good though. It is good that they put in all the others like the Sea Dweller then and the Deep Sea Sea Dweller and everything else because technically they're not. They are and they aren't, right? They're not the Submariner lineup. They're not a Submariner Deep Sea Sea Dweller, right? They're not a Submariner, Sea Dweller. It's a Sea Dweller. It's a Deep Sea Sea Dweller, right?
But the production of how many pieces was made would appear in these books only on the discontinued pieces. So everything that you guys know as the new Sky Dweller, let's say with the Cyclops and all these pieces, not going to appear production numbers.
Yeah, I mean, like we started the kind of conversation today around, Tan, would you buy this book, right? And I think you're seeing, Marcelo, that there's good value in buying this book, right? Like you've got everything that's discontinued up until now. You're going to get current figures from Rolex, which is something that I don't think anybody really officially had before. I think it's a cool concept. And like you said, what if they make a GMT one? What if they make a Daytona one? Would you buy one for a Daytona one? You may want to.
I would definitely.
Because you want to know how many Le Mans were made, right? Like
and you know what, Ted? Here we can go even vintage here. You can even ask him, you know what? I want to know how many of the 5513 was produced or the 5512. He can actually tell you right now.
I wouldn't, honestly, Patek Chris, for me, I would be more interested in like the military Submariners, like the 5517, or even I think some 5514s were military Submariners used by the British, like because those are.
This is amazing.
Yeah, because the 5517 I believe is a subvariant of the 5513. And so, but I think it has a separate production reference with Rolex. So, yeah, I mean, those production numbers obviously are going to be very minute, probably a lot smaller than what we're seeing in the ceramic versions. Still, yeah, it'd be cool. Again, right? Like this is why that book, outside of again, I've read Nick Foltz's books. Like he's a good author. He definitely goes into a lot of details. So, I don't even have the book. I've never seen it, but I'd recommend it just off of the author.
Man, if it's going to be like this, I'm going to need the free books. Because I need the books for the whole trio, the Sub, the GMT, and the Daytona.
Which one would you buy? Which one would you want more? Like, which would be the one you want the most if you were to pick one of those three?
Probably the Daytona.
Because of the Lamont?
But yeah, because of the yes, definitely because of the Lamont. But you know what? I mean, to be honest, if you don't limit me on one book, I would definitely want the whole three. Because they actually are the trio that is so much important for me to know. You know, the three most important sport Rolex of all time that represent the sea, the air, and actually the race.
All right, we got super chat from P Cars. Thanks so much, P Cars. $5 US. I have the 14060M two liner. She's talking about the pre-ceramic Note 8 sub, and a 124060. She's talking about the 41 mil Note 8 sub. Which one would you keep, Marcelo? Time. You tell me first.
The one with the Note 8.
They're both Note 8.
So I would actually well, you actually gave me choices like this one that is the aluminum and one that is ceramic. You know what? Because you wrote the 12, 40, 60. I would pick the 11, 40, 60.
But he
That
doesn't
would
have
be
the
my
11.
choice.
He's asking if he's got these two, which one you're going to pick to keep.
So I keep the 12, 40, 60.
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me, P Cars.
I prefer the modern one, yeah.
Yeah, look, like I like the 14060. I always have. Love the two liners. And I love the fact that in those watches you can put it on a NATO, you can put it on another type of strap, and very easily do it. And it actually looks nice. Whereas on the ceramic, especially the 41s, with the 21 mil, like it just never looked good, with the ceramic versions. And so it's a toss up for me. I would say if you want something that is has modern tech and you like that, you like the the higher power reserve, you like the new bracelet, the new clasp. I mean that in and of itself for a lot of people is why they don't buy 5 digits. So if you value that, then stick with the modern. If that doesn't bother you, if you don't care so much about that, but you like shaking it up and having fun with the watch and changing the straps and stuff, I'd go with the pre-ceramic because again it's kind of what you want, right? But yeah, I could go either way.
And you know what? One more thing, you're absolutely right. And also with Picardy, actually, somebody actually wrote there that the 14, the 146 60 is actually 2 lines. So I guess it's much more valuable than the new Note 8 sub that actually is the 12, 40, 60.
What 2-line means is it's not a chronometer, right? Typically the 2-liners were like the 5513s and stuff like that were they were not chronometer Rolex. I'll pull up a 160
Look,
go ahead.
Look, the 12 40 60 is a Note 8 sub, but it's not a collectible sub. It's a production sub that is now running. You might even lose money on that watch in the future comparing to the 14060 that you have. On value thing, probably the older one would be the one to keep. But for me, the new one would be the one that I would wear. So if I had only these 2 watches, I probably would wear that new one all the time.
Yeah, I mean, P Cars is talking about getting a Bruce Wayne and getting more modern Rolex, right? Like, if you're gonna get more modern Rolex, I mean, you probably if you have this 2-liner, look, the 2-liners are always, a lot of people really love the 14060 2-liner versus the 4-liner, right? Again, big difference here. Not a superlative chronometer. You can see it on the dial. It's just Submariner, and then the depth rating. Very classic to the 5513 because. When you were saying 5513 and 5512, Marcelo, I'll show you a 5512 here, and I'll show you what the big difference is between the two. So let me find a 5512.
Yeah, I think the 5513 was the limited one, the one that actually go much more valuable in price, and the 12 is the cheaper one, right?
Now there are obviously exceptions to every rule here, guys, but just like in the 14060, right? The
Mm.
14060 has a two-liner and it has a four-liner. What does two-liner and four-liner mean? This is a
And
four-liner. This is depth rating, Submariner, superlative chronometer, officially certified. That's a four-liner, right? So the
yes.
5512 was the chronometer grade version of the Submariner. The 5513 was the two-liner, which would mean that it was not a chronometer. The four lines represents the chronometer certification. Okay,
I
so
see.
I'm gonna pull up a 5513 here for you guys. Um, and look, like there's exceptions to every rule. There are 5513s and five.
It's
There's
more
probably
clean on the die, right?
right. So here's a 5513, and again, no four
I
line, right? You
understand.
only have two lines, right? That's what it means by two liner and four liner between the two. Um, it says
I
it's
see.
cost, which is not printed on the dial, right? Like that, that probably is a byproduct of the modern era, whereas in vintage it was two liners were non-chronometer certified, even though the movements themselves probably were um, you know probably of the grade. They're just not certified chronometers. Therefore they didn't print on the dial. And this one they're saying they didn't print it on the dial, it was just an error, or they just chose not to print it for aesthetic purposes. All good. Either way, for me, the 14060, it's not about the movement. Nobody really most people don't buy Rolexes because of chronometer or non-chronometer parts of it. When I told PCars about why I would pick the 14060, it's because of I really think these pre-ceramic Submariners have a lot more fun to them. I know people don't like the bracelets because of the kind of tinish type clasp and just flimsy clasps on the bracelets. Like
Wow, but look at that. It's starting to be browned.
exactly right. Like
Nice.
the pre-ceramics, um, they themselves, in my opinion, really did, they really have the variance like you're talking about because of,
Mm.
you know, different manufacturers they were using and, the products they were using would age, whether it's tritium loom or a certain paint on a dial or an insert, being aluminum and fading a different way, right? Like you're going to get a lot more in that, change of your watch, the transformation of your watch over time. Whereas in a new one, Marcelo, it's going to look very similar to what it looks like today. And is that something you really want? Do you really want something to look kind of brand new? 30 years
Mm.
later? I don't know, right? Like there's a certain level of acceptable and tasteful patina on things. When you see a gold
Right.
watch that has a bit of patina on it, right? Like shows its age and it can be very tasteful. Obviously, if it goes too far, and certain watches age poorly, like yeah, I get it, but there is that kind of sweet spot where these can age very beautifully.
Mm. Yeah, I saw some gold pieces that you see the subs with colors that they don't exist, but they turn that color because of the age, like a purple dial and is things, Rolex never did a purple dial or a chocolate dial and things like that, but they come in with time and they look beautiful. Then they look stunning, especially the purple dial.
Yeah, like I think Doc was. I think he has one of the subs that turned purple. I haven't seen it recently, but I believe he had one. Danny's talking about they go brown
Mm.
because the tritium burned itself out. He's talking about on the indices here, and look,
Mm.
these all have such. This is why vintage, and kind of it's funny, Danny, that people are interested in talking about vintage because often I see like, at least in our space of YouTube, it's all modern, modern, modern. Everybody loves modern, and vintage has just so much depth to it. Like it's like if we were swimming in a in a lake, talking about our Archieverse, if we were to dive into vintage, it's like jumping into the ocean, and just in how deep it can go in not just reference models, but just variations in reference models. And like people can collect just GMT masters, Marcelo, like 6542, 1675,
Mm.
16750, 167. You can go through even Danny, the 1675, GMT Master. I mean, that one ran for a while. Just like the 5513, Marcelo. That
Mm.
5513 was like, I think from like, I don't think it was the 50s, but I think it was like 60s to like the 80s or something. The 5513 ran before it became the the next gen. piece, right? So it's just it's wild on how deep it can be. So yeah, Danny, if you want to keep talking vintage, I'm more than happy to entertain vintage conversation. But hey, we can.
I want to see this sub from the profile. I want to see how tall is that. Has like crystals.
Yeah,
Probably beautiful.
yeah, I don't know. I'm just on Bob's watches. It's just showing different variations of the 5513, and like here's like a spider variation and stuff like that, and for here it's like it's like when you have the spider variation here, it's like you've got a dial. I think Jay Anthony talked about this on his when he came on the live stream. He was saying like one of his watches had like a spider dial and it like cracked, and he absolutely hated it because it just aesthetically didn't look nice. Some people
Yeah.
love this shit. I mean, I don't like it. I don't think this looks very nice. Danny, let me know. Do you like spider dials? Like, I don't know too many people who do, but there's some people
In
who do.
this variation that look here, it doesn't look good at all. It look very cracky. There is a variation that I did see that the whole cracks look almost like he almost look like the waves of the Omega Seamaster, like when he goes like that, he actually is a very unique pattern, so we actually look interesting.
Yeah, Danny, it's not. I don't think you would think it was just the clasp. Like, obviously, on the date, like, even the Daytona, you could buy the Daytona at one point in time with a Jubilee bracelet. So I mean, there's all different kind, like variations of
Yeah,
bracelets. I always
yeah,
like to
but
look at like day dates that have the most variations on a lot of things. Go ahead, Marcelo.
then this is a very ugly crack. But there is ones that have very, very little small cracks that look. You need to find something that look with tons of small cracks that look actually a little bit unique.
Yeah, look, I'm not gonna, I mean, spider dials are not really. I mean, we can do a
Mm.
whole segment on just spider dials and whatnot, but Danny's kind of talking about a couple of different things, and I'm going to pull up a very sod-esque watch. It's for sale at Amsterdam Vintage Watches, 36,000 euros. This one has a solid gold dial, by the way. It's obviously got diamonds on the dial. It's got diamonds on the lugs. Let's talk about all the gaudy pieces first. But what really interests me about this is the bezel. This is a pyramid bezel on a day date, right? And if you think of day dates, you can get a smooth bezel day date, you can get a fluted bezel day date, you can get a pyramid
Oh, I
bezel. You can get
see.
all these different bezels. Yeah, like this is not a fluted bezel. This bezel are little pyramids of gold going around, right? Obviously very flashy and could even be said as gaudy, but this is the thing about Rolex. Like in vintage, you've got Rolex did a lot of wild things in the past.
This is 100% produced by Rolex, this pyramid thing.
Yeah, they have an entire reference that does that do pyramids. What's this
Hmm.
reference here? That it's like 18 something, 18 18018 indicates the watch comes from factory with diamond and lugs. Adding that the pyramid-shaped bezel, uncommonly the fluted bezel, rarely seen on day dates, dating back to 1986. So there was a lot of other pyramid versions. Like if you just look up pyramid, here's another 180. I'll find you another 18018.
So they used
Uh,
to play with the ideas of the flooded bezel. Flooded bezel wasn't a thing like it's today, like an icon thing. I mean, they used to play with it.
right, like when you see here, as I blow this picture up a little bit, you can see the pyramid bezel. So again, not really super common. And if you think about it, you're not getting a watch that in today's day and age you're going to really see pyramid bezels around. And so if you're looking for something a little different, I think of the day date collector, the Rolex collector that has like just shit tons of day dates, and they want variety in their day date lineup, right? Like a bark
Mhm.
day date, a pyramid bezel day date, diamond dial, diamond bezel. Like there's tons of variations in there that you can just have a collection of just this. Doesn't mean you have to go into high horology and go through this like whole fucking bell curve of like being a collector. Everyone tells me about this bullshit journey, Marcelo, where it's like You know, you start with Seiko, then you get your first Rolex, and then you buy more Rolex, and then you start going to high horology, then you come back to Rolex, and you finalize with Rolex. I think that's just bullshit. I think people collect whatever the fuck they want. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't like dress watches, you're never buying very many Patek Philippe's. I would say it just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's a dress watch brand. It's not a sports watch brand, for example. What do you think of the pyramid bezel here, Marcelo? You like it? You hate it? What do you think?
From pictures, especially something like that probably shine, and you need to see this in person. I would love to see this in person. Um, yeah, I would love to see this in person. For me, it's very unusual. That's why it's very unusual. It's something that Rolex probably will not do again because they are now pretty much patented on this flooded bezel. I mean, they appear in all the boutiques now, so they cannot play with this no more.
All right, we're gonna get into hot take section, guys. We're gonna do a bit of hating on the Patek Philippe Nautilus section. Okay, I'm gonna talk a bit about watches. When we think of watch collecting today, Mark, Marcelo, we're thinking about like
Mm.
in watch collecting. A lot of it's become about the case and the bracelet, and less so about the substance. Maybe even uh, anything and I'll say this in that anything that's not circular, right? Like if you think of Royal Oak octagonal case and bracelet, octagonal case with a very unique bracelet. You've got the Nautilus, not a circular shape. And when you think of circular shaped watches that are popular, right? Very exaggerated as well, very flashy. You think of the ceramic Daytona, right? Flashy ceramic bezel, right? Separate. It's not like a simple watch is really super hype these days. Um, okay, I will be adding somebody on the screen here. This is a little bit of a break for my segment. We'll add them on, and this says 430 Danny full screen, please. There you go. This is a message from somebody who's wanted to come on and use their avatar to send a message to 30 Danny. So you are all right. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna move out of solo layout for myself here. Okay, so the Nautilus. So a lot of watch collecting today, I think, has become about the case and the bracelet. And when you think of Nautilus, when people say, "Well, if I'm only going to collect Patek Philippe, I only want to collect the Nautilus," right? And when I look at that, I'm like, isn't that going to be like just so fucking boring? Like, it's the same case, realistically, there's not that much difference here. You're looking at between the 5811 and the 5712, or even between the 5711 and 5712. You're just adding you're literally just adding complications.
You're just adding
right?
a complication, and you know what? You actually did here.
It's all the same, bro. It's literally all the same.
I know, but here is the funny part that you're going into. When you say that, and you can say that because Patek have other models like the World Time and the Grand Complications and Calatravas and so on in different shapes and form of watches. What you're showing me right now in this picture, you're actually showing what the AP did for the last 30 years, that basically they should change the name to Royal Oak. They did basically what you show here is the same watch with the completely with different complications, exactly the same watch. So now on the Nautilus you have basically a dual time zone, you have a moon phase, you have a chronograph, and now you have a perpetual calendar also. And what else you have? You have the simple one, and I think that's it. You still don't have one with a tourbillon. You still don't have one that is a annual calendar. No, actually, you do have the annual calendar.
The annual calendar on the screen.
You don't have one that have a mini repeater. So you see, AP actually took it this on the steroids. with the Royal Oak.
That's
What
a
do you
really
think
good.
about that?
It's a really good point, Marcel. Let me get to Muhammad Ali here, and then let's continue on that. Muhammad Ali, 5 British pounds. Thank you so much, Muhammad Ali. I already have a number of OVO hoodies, my boy, and I will one day join Tan on the Patek stage. I know I can say with very high confidence, Muhammad Ali, you're going to get there.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali,
I was very
brother.
fortunate, when we were in London, to be able to go to the rare handcrafts exhibition from Patek Philippe that was at the London Salon that time. When we were in London, Muhammad Ali joined me. We had a great talk with the salon director. He could see that obviously a number of us were enthusiasts. I was wearing my World Time. Higgy Baby was wearing his World Time. And everybody was just really good vibe and really good chat. He could see like a lot of watch collectors, but I want to talk, Muhammad Ali here, just on kind of what Marcelo said around. It's just a Nautilus with a complication. It's the same watch, but just slamming in different complications. However, they're not taking it as seriously as everything else. And this is super interesting, Marcelo, because you're right. Because you're saying in AP side, AP has started to basically make the Royal Oak and the Code 1159 right now, but mostly the Royal Oak, I would say, as their platform that they're adding just
Yes.
like crazy stuff. And this is interesting because the way Patek actually separates its catalog here, it goes by, and when we go to collections, right? Like the grand complications are a separate collection from the Nautilus, right? The Nautilus itself is a collection. It's not a, it's a platform where they're going to stuff, all of their real, high-end watchmaking, I would say, as their flagship, right? Just like you said, they're not a,
Mm.
they're just going to become a Royal Oak company. And Philippe's, and sorry, Thierry Stern, Philippe Stern's son, said, I'm walking a very dangerous line because he always mentions IWC. He says IWC was a precious metal company, and when they went steel, he's like there was no going back. IWC never could recover, and Patek, the current owners, they really believe in their watches are primarily precious metal pieces. Their brand, their core part of their brand is complicated dress watches, complicated watches. Yes, they do produce sport watches because there's a demand for it from their customers, but it's not what defines them. It's not what they want to define them. And it's just never going to be that under their current ownership. Now, obviously, if they get bought out by somebody else, that might start pumping out a shit ton more sport watches, maybe. But that's why, you see in their catalog, it's not like the Nautilus. When you go to the Nautilus, and Nautilus has a grand complication in Patek's terms in its collection, right here with the perpetual calendar. This is a grand complication. When you go to Patek's collection section, the perpetual calendar is what they classify as a grand complication. This watch is not like stuffed into the grand complication section to show it's included in that group. No, this is part of the Nautilus collection. So what that's telling me is like, yeah, I mean, if you really have to have the Nautilus, and you do like complications, well, we're going to serve you, Mr. Customer. However, you have to understand that our real watchmaking is going into our stuff that's on a leather strap. We're going to kind of give you a taste, but it's never going to be to that level, like as you described. So definitely a very interesting way to look about it, because when you go back into the collections and you go into grand complications, well, this first row is their perpetual calendars. And what's different here,
Yeah.
Marcelo, to the World Time, to the Nautilus lineup is these are all different. Cases are actually different here.
Yeah.
This is a
And,
more of the traditional
and
Calatrava case.
you know what? I'm going to even go further. So yes, the Nautilus was the watch that also they did it in steel. I think they did another model in steel. I think was the one model of Calatrava that they did it in steel, and I think was another one model. I think was the 5960 that they did it in steel. And so you don't have that many steel versions in Patek. Now, being somebody that have Patek, somebody that know Patek, do you see Patek making in any lineup? Probably people thinking usually about the Nautilus there.
Mhm.
Nautilus, let's say, in titanium, in ceramic, in carbon fiber, skeleton versions.
It's
Look,
so yeah, it's a great question. Patek Philippe did make a titanium watch. They have made titanium watches. They're designated. So Patek Philippe references the metal are designated by the letter at the end of the number, right? So when it says G,
mm,
that means white gold. When it says R, that means rose gold. When it says J, that means yellow gold. P is obviously platinum. And if you
mm.
look, Patek Philippe also has a T designation for titanium. I'm going to show you guys a
Really?
yeah, I'm going to show you.
But it's something that already discontinued, something that they didn't do no more, right?
Let me show you a titanium Patek Philippe here, Marcelo time. Let me find you a good well, I do have one here from
Wow.
Hodinky. Here's a titanium 5270 perpetual calendar chronograph.
It's a
All
new
in
watch.
it was made for I think it was made for the Only Watch auction. It's a piece unique.
Wow.
But they have made a titanium. Yeah, they have made titanium watches. And interestingly enough, like your question was more on the titanium Nautilus. Yeah, sure they could.
Mm.
I'm sure they would if for the right buyer and the right maybe the right charity. If they're doing it as a
Carbon fiber, ceramic, skeleton.
I mean, look, I think there's limits with the brand as well, right? That they
Mm.
may do those as piece uniques or one offs for charity. Um, Not a core. I don't think it's a core belief of their brand. They really want to stick to gold, platinum. They prefer the precious metals. We got Dodger 10 post love notes. Thanks for the show, guys. Yeah, man.
So
I thought for European
that,
time zone Dodger it was a good time for you guys.
look, it's good to know. It's good to know that we're not going to see a Nautilus, how we say, AP, a skeleton carbon fiber, a perpetual calendar.
So Jay Sykes, the hype Pateks are all steel. Highest markup on secondary market on steel. Many precious
Mm.
metal models are less than list on secondary. Yeah, that's for a couple of reasons. Partly because the hype models today are sport watches, which are like Mars Help pointed out for a long time did have a lot of
But
steel production between the 5167, Aquanaut 5711, 5712, et cetera. Like
but by the way, Ten, like artists of Geneva, they actually did the skeleton carbon fiber Daytona. We all saw that watch already. We know the watch and so
hmm.
on. I don't know if they did something with Nautilus, and if they did, I would love to see if there is a skeleton, maybe ceramic or carbon fiber Nautilus.
Yeah, I haven't really. Yeah, it's not really my thing, right? I haven't really looked it up, but
Mm,
let me answer Jay Sykes. So hypothetics are all steel. I mean that is. I mean, there's a couple reasons for that. The first primary reason, if we talk about modern pieces, is because those were the sport models, right? Like 5167 Aquanaut, 5711
mm,
Nautilus, 5712
mm.
Nautilus, et cetera, et cetera. You can go down the Nautilus line of the numerous ones that also have precious metal production now, but had
Right.
steel in the past. But also, steel is also a very small amount of the production at Patek Philippe. So
Mm.
steel watches coming from the brand with the brand's logo on it are inherently by design rare in that sense. So steel is kind of a two piece part of it. Are all precious metals not good investments? Like I think JSD Sykes' conversation here is about more value retention and investment. I would also venture to disagree with Jay Sykes because I mean, while those hype models are like that, the highest selling Patek Philippe's out there are precious metals at auction. So there's still a
And
ton of precious metals itself
and
very very
also
high at
one more
auction.
thing to make a point of, I don't think that AP or Patek or maybe even Bergeron Constantin, when they do the Nautilus versions, sorry, the steel versions,
Hmm.
they are made from a 904L steel, right? They are probably 316L steel, like a
Yeah, I never
softer
looked.
steel.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Marcelo, just think of it like this: it's unobtainium no matter what, whether it's 904
Mm.
or 316. It's a Patek Philippe steel watch is rare by design, and when we're talking about hype models, it is fueled by the fact that sport watches are popular today. That does not mean sport watches are going to be popular forever in that range. There had been
Mm.
a long period of time when the Nautilus and the Aquanaut were actually dogs of the range. So the point I'm making is anything's possible. Everybody's going to tell you that sport watches are never going down. I would like to just remind everybody that understand why certain vintage watches go up, right? Like the popular models are going to be what people remember as well. But also remember that, like, why don't we buy certain dress watches? Well, a lot of people consider them grandpa watches, and that's
Mm.
what my grandfather will really look at what your grandchildren are seeing you wear right now, right? They're seeing you wear Hulks and Pepsis and everything else. And I always point out, Marcelo, to the fact that of the idea of the brand Daniel Wellington. I say, look, like if the dress watch is dead, why, a number of years ago did Daniel Wellington succeed so much with a demographic that's very, very young? We're talking teenagers, people in their early 20s, right? Yeah, it's a cheap watch, but there's a shit ton of cheap watches out there people can buy. The design is pure dress watch. So if you're going to tell me that that hit the eye of the youth, which it had to because that's a fashion item, you can't tell me that, like, the sport watch fad is not going to die, right? Because if it was the case, Daniel Wellington probably wouldn't have been popular. Like, I'm gonna give you guys a massive hot take on
But
that
but
one because
but you know what? I give another example. If today we would see Roger Federer or Nadal or I don't know Michael Jordan and all these guys wearing only Calatravas, so we wouldn't care about the sport watches.
yeah, that's a good point. And I think to make it a little bit more at the ground level for most of us that are not celebrities like you, Marcelo, that can't get a Le Mans at retail, that just don't have the star power, I would
Ah,
say, you know.
celebrity. Oh, oh.
But you're right, because you're talking about influencers, right? And
Yeah.
influencers are at all different levels of the game, right? Marcelo's talking about celebrity influencers. One thing that I found, people always ask me, like, well, why do you find these streams entertaining, and or why do you go on the panel, right? So I was, on the panel many years ago, 2017, 2018, talking watches with Archie because I truly enjoyed talking watches with Archie. One byproduct of that was, helping people, find the watches that, they were looking for, introducing them to new watches that they never considered, and then hearing about them, their stories about, when they message me on, WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and just be like, hey man, like, I totally bought this watch after listening to you talk. It's a famous story. Tim Wright did this. Tim, he's admitted saying this on his stream numerous times, where he was never. This was way before he ever came on Archie's show. He was listening in the chat. Me and Archie were talking about the 5196 Calatrava, and he was looking to buy his, stepfather a Patek Philippe, and he ended up choosing that watch because of, what we were talking about, and was able to kind
Mm.
of, that story meant something to him. But many examples of people that, have bought in certain watches because they're like, well, Archie or Tan or Bear or Marcelo or whoever, were talking about it, and it really hit me. So influencing happens at all different levels of the game. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a celebrity, because somebody may talk about something that resonates with you, like that day, Marcelo, where you talked about the Smurf. And you know if anybody would ever think that, like, oh well, Tan, like, what the hell are you going to learn from Marcelo about watches? You've been collecting a lot longer maybe than he has. I would say no. Like, I look for learning something new every day. And when I learned about that on the Smurf, I was like, that's why I asked you that question about the Smurf, because I was like, why don't we share this with other
Yeah.
people that may not know that? Because I found that fascinating and very, informative. Loose Tooth is saying the Society for Thin Dress Watches. This was a. Let me pull this up, Loose Tooth, because we got some time here. Archie's luxury to last website. This one is luxury to last.
Tim, I'm not going to stay with you until Archie opens the show. You know that.
No,
I'm
hey
going
man,
to
look,
stay.
hey Marcelo.
And
Honestly, if
then
you got
4:30.
Marcelo, look, if you gotta go, I know it's like it's 4:30 in the morning. Why don't you drop off, Marcelo? I'm gonna round this up, trying to solo maybe. I can round it up solo, Marcelo. You go to bed. It's all good. I'm not gonna probably
Okay.
not gonna go that late, but I can probably go a little bit longer. But all good.
No
But yeah, look, don't
problem.
worry, man.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much, brother.
yeah, man. Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for coming. Go to sleep,
Of
man.
course.
Don't stay up. I don't. I know why you're helping me, because you think I need it for panelists. I'm all good. I'll do it solo right now. You go to bed. Um,
Love you, man. See you
See you,
later,
bro.
bro.
See you, bro. Thanks so much, man. Loose Tooth, the Society for Thin Dress Watches. So this is Archie Luxury's luxurytolast.com website. It's always funny to have a peruse at, like, what he was doing. Like, it's what's for sale on the Archie Luxury. I no longer deal in used goods. I highly recommend the following sellers, right? Like, you can see who like he used to be friends with and stuff like that. And here for you, Loose Tooth, we got the Society for Thin Dress Watches. It has its own website, which I think is a subsite of, it is a subsite of this, and I'll read this out to you. The Society for Thin Dress Watches is a modern movement which aims to bring back the popularity of the thin dress watch. Since the 1990s, quality Swiss watch manufacturers have moved towards larger size watches, often discontinuing the production of ultra thin watches. Whilst this trend is acceptable for casual living, the downside has been acceptance of large watches for quote unquote formal/dress situations. The aim of the Society for Thin Dress Watches is to educate men into realizing this is a sartorial mistake. With education, we can bring back popular. By the way, Archie's been going on massive run-on sentences here. With education, we can bring back the popularity of the wafer-thin dress watch as made famous by such houses as Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet. There you go, Loose Tooth. For you, for free, we have the Society for Thin Dress Watches. We got JB, member for 19 months. Thank you so much, JB, for your membership. Celebrities like Cristiano Ronaldo that wear Hublot, no one cares. Yeah, man, like... I mean, I know people, JB, in my real life that, like, when they ask me about because they know I like watches, they ask me about like what's a good, first luxury watch. And I always say, look, if you can, scrape up the money, get a Rolex, you'll be happier. If not, and you like Omega, Omega's a great brand. Obviously I recommend the Moon watch. I'll recommend Seamaster, recommend a lot of things that, are going to be a quality luxury watch. I don't really recommend a lot of really entry level like Longines or Hamilton and stuff like that. Great watches, Oris, not really for me, not really the group of watches I dig. So I really talk about starting watches. I start kind of in the Omega category, and then if the person can actually get enough for Rolex, I'd always recommend Rolex. But Hublot always keeps coming up, and they're like, when I say why don't you get Rolex, they're like, well, what about a Hublot? And I'm like, why do you like that watch? And again, advertising, marketing, it makes it aesthetically pleasing because they just, they're hit with information overload, right? Because a lot of, advertising, the purpose of it is to sell that image. And when it becomes ubiquitous or it becomes commonplace, because Hublot has done a great job of really spamming, in through sport, their pieces and whatnot. And it's just crazy that, like, people start thinking about that and they start saying, well, what about that brand, right? And I always kind of have to warn them. I said, look, Hublot doesn't, like, they have some good watches. A lot of their watches are just, you're paying a lot for the marketing. I don't know. It's not really for me, but hey, there are people that I know that do like him. And, there's certain Hublots that are good value. I think I don't know if Danny's still around, but I think the Big Bang at some points was decent value on the secondary. I got JB 12 euro super sticker. Thank you so much, JB. I know that you were on with Marcelo earlier. You were in the chat earlier. I didn't get a chance to watch that stream. Just been a little busy in the morning, and then had some time off in the afternoon. So I was like, you know what, let's talk watches. I don't mind doing shows solo, and because I have a couple different topics to talk to everybody about. But let's talk about. I had another topic around. Let's find a nice watch that may have a nice video in it. So let's pull up the 5172. This is the chronograph. So this is the topic I wanted to talk about was watch collector. The term watch. I've heard this on a number of live streams over the past, I'd say, past couple of months. The term watch collector and watch enthusiast. And funny enough, get this. Apparently, Tim Wright has said, that I'm a watch enthusiast and not a watch collector, which would made me laugh because I was like, I own a collection of, of high horology pieces like ever before Tim Wright ever bought his first watch. So don't know how he could say I'm not a watch collector, but this is where I wanted to kind of talk about the separation of the two. And I can even talk about influencers that can affect people's buying and why we're kind of in this kind of groupthink phase of sport watches. So watch collector, it's pretty simple, right? You're buying watches, you've purchased watches, you have a collection of watches. I don't believe that one watch is a collection. I don't believe in, you can have a one and done and you could just be a normal guy with one watch. I mean, that you're just a normal guy, right? Like, you're not a watch collector, I think, in my mind. You can be a watch enthusiast with one watch, but you're not a watch collector. Watch collector by design means you have a collection of watches. Like, by definition, that's what it means. So, collection can be anything more than one, in my opinion. Other people define it differently. Some people say 3 is a collection. Some people say 5 is a collection. To some people, 20 is a collection. To me, anything more than one is a collection. You can have 2 watches and you're a watch collector. Okay. You can't be a watch collector if you don't have any watches. This was one of my biggest gripes with Marco Ferrante when he first came on the scene. And funny enough, CB, if he's watching, he can remember back then where, and CB actually disagreed with me back then, but I don't know if he disagrees with me now. But Marco used to come on the shows, and this is really early times. We're talking when he first came on Archie's show. And he would, spruik that, Rolex is the best and fight these other brands like Lange and other things. And I just, in my mind, I was like, he has one watch. He has a Panerai, I believe, at the time. I mean, he had one real watch. Like, I'm not talking about like him having like a bunch of shitters, right? Like, he had one Panerai. I believe it was a Radiomir at the time. And I was like, who the hell is this guy to tell people how to be a watch collector? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell does he know about watch collecting? He's never owned a Lange. He's never worked hard to save up money for a Lange and then having to spend 30, 40, 50, 100,000 of his own hard-earned money to pick a Lange over a Patek, over an AP. How can he give you any advice on what to buy and what not to buy, right? But interestingly enough, CB, back in the day when I was calling for Marco to be booted and all this stuff, because I was like, this kid doesn't know shit about watches. Why the fuck is he on the show? It's funny because CB, I went back and I've been doing some work for Archie and I found one of those streams and CB wrote in the comment, who the fuck would listen to 10? This guy fucking sold the Nautilus and bought a Calatrava afterwards. So I found that very funny. But I also found it very interesting, CB, and it actually highlighted what I was saying, where, if I've experienced the Nautilus, if I've experienced these watches, if I've saved up my hard-earned money and chosen to buy a Nautilus over a sports car, over an investment property, over whatever, the opportunity cost. I mean, I really can give other people advice, in my opinion, on that of the experience. Simply being a watch dealer or somebody who works at a watch dealer and handles a bunch of watches every day, like they don't, it's not their money, right? They're not the ones, they can tell you what they like versus everything else, but that's just personal kind of, in my opinion, just, your first impression take of it, right? Like, we all know as watch collect, this is again the difference, watch collector, watch enthusiast, right? A watch collector, like Marcelo talked about earlier about the Le Mans, he said the Le Mans, like, it grew on him. It wasn't love at first sight. He doesn't feel the watch is that special in any way, shape, or form. He feels that the watch is just, it's a precious metal Daytona, right? It's not, it's nothing crazy. So for me, it's like, well, the evolution of my own collecting, I was like, when I looked at the Nautilus and I kind of got over it, like, I bought the Nautilus, and don't get me wrong, guys, I bought the Nautilus purely because other people were giving me advice to buy the Nautilus. I was, wanting to buy my first Patek Philippe. It was before, I was watching Archie at the time. I wasn't, Archie did not influence me to buy a Calatrava first, for example, right? Like, I bought my first Patek Philippe was a Nautilus. It was not a Calatrava or a dress watch. I chose to buy that watch because, I asked questions. I went online. This was kind of before live stream on YouTube, and I didn't want to pay Archie any money for this at the time. And I just went on the forums, on like Rolex forums and stuff. And I said, what do you guys like? What should I buy? Or what do you think of these models? And everyone was like, Nautilus. And again, this was at a time when the Aquanaut was considered the poor man's Nautilus. So the Aquanaut was also in the running. And everyone's like, no, don't get the Aquanaut. Like, don't get the poor man's Nautilus. It's like, it's like date just, in that sense of, no, it's a lesser model. You don't hear that today. If you've got an Aquanaut today, you're a baller, right? Like, everyone thinks you're great. Back then, you were kind of like, you're playing second fiddle, I'd say. So it was Nautilus. Okay, then I had to choose 5711, 5712, right? Again, the 5711 between the two was more hyped, 5712 is obviously a better watch because it has complications in it versus a 5711, which is just simple, time only with a date piece realistically. So, um, yeah, like I ended up picking up the 5711. That was my first watch, guys. My first Patek Philippe was a 5711 Nautilus steel, the hypest of all hype watches, you could say. The poster child of what you'd say a hype watch is. When you say hype watch, people think Rolex Daytona. They think, um, and Patek Nautilus. Like, those two watches. I think if you ever said what's a hype watch, people will probably pick those two pretty consistently. So so it was funny when CP put that comment. He's like, "Why the fuck? Who the hell is Tan talking about? Telling you to get advice, trying to give you advice to sell a Nautilus. He sold a Nautilus and bought a Calatrava." It was funny to me when I was reading that comment because it kind of it showed historically the evolution of my collecting around. Like, I kind of got over the Nautilus and I bought it because it's what everyone else thought was cool, the hype. And then when I got over it, and I was kind of like, man, I mean, I had a Royal Oak at the same time. I had a 15300 AP Royal Oak, which, in my opinion, had a better bracelet, a better clasp, just cooler, right? Better story. I mean, the Royal Oak is more iconic than the Nautilus is. I mean, the Royal Oak was really the watch that saved AP. The Nautilus is not the watch to save the Patek Philippe. The watch that saved Patek Philippe is actually the Calatrava, the reference 96, which is known internally at Patek Philippe as the Grand Classique. It's called the Grand Classique because it's given that honor in that watch, the reference 96, was the watch that saved the brand as well as has been so historic to the brand. They have the Calatrava cross as their symbol, right? Like, it's a symbol of the flagship lineup. It's not the Nautilus cross, guys. It's the Calatrava cross. So, again, to me, I kind of got over it. So, back to the topic of watch collector and watch enthusiast, right? So, by definition, a watch collector is somebody who collects watches, is somebody who has more than one watch. Having one watch is not a watch collector. Now, watch enthusiast. Similar, car enthusiast, car collector, right? Like, you can be a watch collector and a watch enthusiast, but you cannot you cannot be a watch enthusiast. You cannot be a watch collector and have no watches, but you can be a watch enthusiast and have no watches, and you can be a watch collector and also be a watch enthusiast. And what watch enthusiast means is you just have a passion for, the hobby, right? You have a passion for high horology, you have a passion for horology, you have a passion for just watches as jewelry, as design, as, the passion for watches is not, everybody's different, right? Like, some people like the investment, some people like, the fact that they can make money. Some people like, industrial design. Think of ID Guy, right? I think his channel is one of the most unique channels because he approaches watches in a completely different perspective than most YouTubers do. Now, does ID Guy, and hopefully ID Guy is watching because he is a friend of mine, and I know sometimes he watches the show. But yeah, look, ID Guy, he approaches watches from an industrial design perspective. He evaluates watches on what he thinks is aesthetically pleasing, and then from an ID perspective, he will even give suggestions on what he thinks can ameliorate the watch. So um, when you think of watches and being a watch enthusiast, it's about having passion for horology, for you know watches in general. It doesn't mean that you're into watch collecting. It doesn't mean that you want to have a big watch collection or you want to ever have more than one watch. You can be that one watch person, somebody who bought a Submariner and own a Submariner and be a watch enthusiast because you love watches. You're passionate about watches. You have absolutely no interest in buying more than one watch. You're happy with what you have. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no better level or worse level. It's just what is a different interest to different people, right? Some people love to hoard things and collect things. And like I said, watch collecting is not necessarily just about expensive watches. Watch collecting can be about inexpensive watches. You can collect a bunch of swatches for all that matters, and you could still be considered a watch collector, right? And probably a watch enthusiast because you could be you could be interested in all kinds of watches. You can also be a watch collector and not be a watch enthusiast. This is an interesting category. I came up across people like this when the Damien Hirst Swatch Mickey. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember this. This was like 2019, maybe. It came out. Swatch did a collaboration with the artist Damien Hirst, and he's done artwork of the character Mickey Mouse, and so they have a Mickey version of the swatch called both the Mirror Spot Mickey and the Spot Mickey. Anyway, so it was sold exclusively, I think, online. Maybe it was in some stores at the time. But so Jin and I were on Archie's live stream, and Jin was like, you know what, I'm going to stay up for it. I'm a real fan of Damien Hirst, and it's cool to get the swatch and whatever, right? So piqued my interest. I thought it was cool, so I actually stayed up to get this watch. And obviously, think of sneaker releases and everything else, like the website's crashing and everything else. I'm like messaging Swatch on Facebook saying, hey, can I'm messaging Swatch Canada because I'm hoping to get someone who's a Canadian who's manning it, who may be a little nice. And I'm like, yeah, like the site has crashed. Can you just, and they're like, yeah, it's just a huge volume. We're actually going to put the site back up in a few minutes. I'm like, do you mind just sending me a message when you're putting the site back up? And whoever was manning the Facebook chat actually had really good intel, because he's like, I got a response saying it's going up, in a minute or in 30 seconds. So I was able to then refresh and actually buy both the Mirror Spot Mickey and the Spot Mickey. The Spot Mickey was the harder one to get. Anyways, so I was watching Twitter at the time. And this is, guys, by the way, this is like at like 1 or 2 in the morning. I stayed up for this. Jin had actually passed out. He drank too much and passed out. So he actually forgot. And I'll tell you kind of how the story ends in a second. But I watch Twitter, and people are just frustrated, and then I'm messaging people on Twitter, and I'm trying to understand it. And what I ended up finding out was a lot of people weren't watch collectors. Like they were like, a lot of people were watch collectors, but they were like also art collectors. And there was a ton of art collectors that weren't watch collectors that wanted to buy that piece because it was a Damien Hirst piece. It wasn't because of the watch. It was because of the artist that they wanted to get, right? So, you can have, a wristwatch that you wear every day, like a Seiko, or even a Rolex that you were gifted, and also have purchased that, that Damien Hirst watch. You wouldn't consider yourself, maybe a collector in that. Oh, sorry, you could be a collector, but you may not be a watch enthusiast, right? That's what I meant. That you can be a watch collector because you do own more than one watch, and you do have a collection, and you have sought out to collect a certain piece, but you're maybe collecting for a different reason, and therefore not be a watch enthusiast like that artist was. The Gangsta 10, is there any influencer who might make you buy a watch if it was endorsed by them? If so, who? That's a good question, actually. Honestly, for me, it would be somebody who has some influence when it comes to a brand that I'm interested in, right? Let's talk about Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe's a brand that you guys all know I love. And I would be looking for people that had some influence in the brand, right? People that may, like Resheppi, for example, great example, right? He was a watchmaker at Patek Philippe, and if he were telling me, Tan, you should really go into the 3940 because those perpetual calendars were just made differently. They're just a lot more rare. There's stuff that you don't know about. Or if I saw him wearing one, it would definitely be the case. And a really good example of this, Gary, is the Rolex ceramic Pepsi. So I don't know if Bear Clooney, if you're listening, but if you are, I know you love this watch, and you always say this is the one and done Rolex, the ceramic steel Pepsi. Gary, Philippe Dufour, the absolute, people say the greatest living watchmaker of our time, he wears a Rolex Pepsi, right? So somebody, in my opinion, of a brand or a watchmaker or somebody of influence in watches that I respect, absolutely would be an influencer that, could wear a watch and I would want to buy one. So that's why I would say the term influencer doesn't have to be a celebrity. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a sports figure, a musician, or whatever, to influence people to buy certain things. But on the flip side, Gary, I mean, like, it's classic to ever see, like, a CD cover of Tupac wearing, the gold date, right? Classic photo. People remember Tony Soprano with the gold date, right? Like influencers that were in popular culture that can influence you to wear pieces because it was cool to wear, right? I think there's a lot of them that wear the 36 mil date that influence and can do that. Julius Caesar says, I buy what I like, which I think the true, the Caesar himself, I think the real Gaius Julius Caesar, I think would abide by the same rules. Patek Chris says, Diddy never made me buy a Beauvais. Yeah, I'd hope not, man. I'd hope not. But watch collector, watch enthusiast, right? So you can be a watch collector and not be a watch enthusiast. Very rare, not really common. Often watch collectors are watch enthusiasts. Not every watch enthusiast is a watch collector, right? You can have no watches and still love watches, right? Like, there's a lot of cases of them. We've had them on the show, right? We have people who own fucking no watches, but they just love watches, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with being a watch enthusiast, and that's why I say, like, the terms are not above or below each other. They're just different in that sense. Being a watch collector, by definition, is you collect watches. Being an enthusiast means you're passionate about it, right? Like, I think people just blow it out of proportion and they try to make it like. So where I'm going with this whole watch collector thing is, like when Tim Wright says Tan is not a watch collector, he's a watch enthusiast. It's meant to like put someone down. It's meant to basically say, well, your collection is not as big as George Varghese' collection, or your collection is not as big as Humble Pine's collection, or whoever, in his mind is whatever. Number one, he does not know what's in my entire collection, and I don't share everything with everybody. I do share some stuff with everybody. Number two, being a number of watches owned in a collection does not define, to me, a level of collector. It just doesn't, right? Like, you could be, the richest person in the world and literally buy everything, and your collection may not have any real rhyme or reason to it. You're just buying whatever is just out there, right? Whereas I can look at a collector that has a 3-piece, a 5-piece, and look at, like, what they've chosen in that 3-piece or that 5-piece, because they're being selective and they're saying, you know, I don't want to be wasteful. I like to wear my things. I like to enjoy my things. And if I have to wear and enjoy my things, and I really just, I know, like, for example, in my case, 5 to 7 is generally enough for me, because I want to wear every watch. I want to rotate every watch. I want to keep my watches in good condition. Um, and I don't want to have watches sitting there that I don't wear. So for me to own a 20 watch collection becomes more of it becomes more of a job or a chore than it does a joy, in my opinion, because I'm always trying to meet the certain requirements that I've set for myself in collecting, that I want my stuff to be used, and I don't like to buy things that just sit there. That I think it's wasteful. Um, so for me, it'll always drive me to a 3 or a 5-piece or an 8-piece or a 7-piece. I don't think I'll ever be a 20-piece. Not that anybody couldn't afford it or whatever. It's just it would never work for me, but maybe that works for other people, right? Maybe other people, they love having 20 watches. They wear every single watch every single day and they rotate it and they're cool with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when people use the kind of terms to put people down and say, well, you're not a collector, you're an enthusiast. Well, there's nothing wrong with being an enthusiast. I think being part of being a watch collector and an enthusiast is really a great thing. I'd hate to really meet a watch collector that's not an enthusiast, and you're probably thinking about an investor, right? Like somebody who's just there. He does collect watches, but his purpose is different. His purpose is to invest. It's not to really have the joy from collecting, the joy we all get from collecting. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. We got Mr. Zoso, who says sharing is caring. Absolutely, Mr. Z. I always like to share a bit of ramblings on and rants and hot takes and whatever I can share. The gangster, next year's big thing will be a Lewis Hamilton, Richard Mille. Yeah, you know what, it could be, right? Lewis Hamilton is, definitely an influencer. People like the IWC Petronas. I think that's a great edition watch. I actually like the color of the IWC. Let me pull up that IWC for you guys. IWC Petronas. Yeah, I really dig this watch, man. This is the AMG Formula One edition Petronas. IWC Pilots chronograph. Yeah, man, really like this watch. I mean, look, if a Richard Mille looked like this in the colorway, yeah, you know what, that'd probably be a hit too. So I'm not gonna fault anybody for liking that. I could tell you, owning so many watches for me is a waste. I don't enjoy them anymore. Kind of a bummer. Yeah, man. Like Mr. Z, I realized that myself, and yeah, it just was. It's interesting when I look back and I scroll through photos that I have on my phone and whatnot. Like, I see a time when I was all about just picking up everything, right? And then now I'm just looking at it like, would I love to have some of those watches back? Sure, but like, would I wear them? Maybe not, right? And then I just will get rid of them. I just won't. It'll sound like a good idea at the time. It'll be great. It'd be great to show up, put up 20 Patek Philippe's and flex on Archie and whatever. But like, that kind of loses its appeal after the first I guess reaction from that. Serdi Danny, is David Connolly a collector or enthusiast? Good question. I think David Connolly actually does have a collection of watches, so I would say both. Being a collector by no means means you have to be a Rolex collector or a luxury collector. You just got to collect watches and have that as a actual. Because look, people can have multiple. You can have 5 watches and not be a collector, right? Like, like there's lots of people who just have watches for fashion, right? They don't look at themselves as a collection. They don't look at themselves as a collector. They're just like, I just have 5 watches. I want to wear 5 different things. David Connolly picks watches he likes, and he likes to look at his, all his pieces. He sees his pieces as a collection, and so that was where I would consider him a collector. And obviously, he got a love for watches. He does talk about it. So yeah, he's both, man. I would say he's got the moniker of both. Hamilton is driving a Ferrari next year. It's okay, man. Hamilton's driven for everybody. He's driven for fucking McLaren as well. So no beef with that. Patek Chris, I see you have a 5172 on the screen, Tan. Did you see Phillips had a nice salmon dial 5070G in an auction last year, 2020? No, I didn't see that. 5070 is obviously the Lemania movement, not the in-house movement that they moved to in the 5170. And obviously the 5070s and subsequently the 5970s have become quite collectible with collectors over the newer models like the 5170 and the 5270, which is current production model. So no, I didn't see that. I'll probably have to look that up after. I'm kind of rounding off here. I've done about almost 2.5 hours. I'll give it a couple more minutes, and then I'll probably round it off. But yeah, no, look, guys, it's been good. I've been trying to squeeze in some watch talk for everybody. Just kind of talking about topics that come to mind. Obviously, anything in the chat you guys want to talk about. I think that like the collecting journey is one that doesn't have to be, full of landmines. And when we talk about influencers, kind of to round this discussion off on influencers, is think of when I told that story about me buying the and by the way, just to end that story on the mirror spot Mickey, the Damien Hirst one, I gifted Jin the one that was actually the sought after one later on. A few years later, I had it unopened. I kept it unopened, and I actually gifted it to him because he had fell asleep that night. He'd gotten too drunk. He really wanted that watch. I ended up getting it, and I ended up gifting it to a friend. Yeah, like just to round it off on influencers. So when I went on forums and people were telling me buy the Nautilus, buy the Nautilus, buy the Nautilus, we do that on YouTube a lot too. It's like you go on, whether it's here or the Colony or Tim or anywhere. It's kind of like everyone's spruiking the same thing. It's groupthink because everyone's just like, what's the first thing you did when you're trying to learn about a watch? You went on YouTube, you went on the forums, you asked people, right? Well, those same people are then perpetuating the same thing out there. And I challenge that notion to say that we live in a very small pond, I would say, and I think it's even more amplified on the groupthink when it comes on YouTube. But if certain types of watches were dead or not aesthetically pleasing to most people, certain brands wouldn't exist. Lange for a long time was a dress watch only brand, right? It survived. I mean, it couldn't survive if there was no interest in their pieces. So, just to kind of round off here on the last thought, for me, it's very, very important that, groupthink is broken. Like we always come with a different perspective. I know that my opinions are not always popular. Guys like me and CB can be totally cool and totally friendly with each other when, he's obviously throwing missiles at me and I'm throwing missiles back. Right. I think that everybody's got the opinions, the different opinions, the variety is what makes this place interesting. If it was all the same collection, it would be boring. It's like watching Archie's collection every single day. So, just keep, buying what you like, keep enjoying what you like. It's kind of cliche, but it really does really make this place a lot better. So I'll leave you guys with the video called The Meaning of Life, the way I perceive it. And I'll see you guys next time. Archie will be on probably in about 2.5 hours. We'll see you guys then. Take care.
between each other's arms. Do you mind if I stay by your side? Just looking at you, all the time to go.